Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 30th, 2019 Board of Selectmen's meeting. My name is Mark Elfman. I'm filling in for Chris, who won't be able to attend today's meeting. I'll go through the agenda real quick. 7 o'clock, citizens input. At 7:05, we were going to have a community update by our representative and state senator, but neither one of them could attend today, so we're postponing that for another meeting or two. 7:10, we'll have a little discussion of Foxborough Cleanup Day Committee. 7:15, public hearing on the Red Robin change of officers. 7:30, Waxy O'Connor's liquor license update. 7:45, the Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Committee appointments. 8 o'clock, the taxi, limousine, livery licenses, vote discussion on the moratorium and rates for fares. 8:15, Board of Selectmen Annual Town Meeting warrant recommendations. 8:30, Finance Director position discussion. 8:45, reappointment interim Finance Director, Town Accountant. 8:50, policy discussion. 9:20, Selectmen update. 9:25, Town Manager update. 9:30, Assistant Town Managers update. And then we have a bunch of action items. So for one last time, Jim, do you want to lead us in the pledge?
Sure, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, right on time, citizens input. Anybody for citizens input? Heather raised her hand first. Heather, we're informed that that doesn't work, that mic doesn't work. So
You might have to sit at the
sit.
table.
Yeah?
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heather Harding, 14 North High Street, volunteer appointed member of the Fields Committee, the Open Space Plan Committee, chairman of the Recreation Board, and lifelong resident. I am here tonight to ask this board to address a concern I have with respect to social media posts and statements made, as I saw this was an agenda item for discussion. In November of 2017, an incident in which I was treated in a less than professional manner occurred at Town Hall, and at the town manager's suggestion, I filed a formal complaint. My complaint was investigated by an independent third-party professional, and the investigator found sufficient credible evidence to support my complaint. The findings and the report were reviewed with me, and the town took action as necessary based on those same findings. At the town's request, I cooperated fully and also did not comment publicly on the matter when specifically asked not to. I put my trust in them to handle it. Subsequently, I found myself the subject of false public statements and posts made by elected and appointed officials. So I just want to state clearly, I did not make any inaccurate allegations, and I did not allege #MeToo. I have met with town administrators, Board of Selectmen members, and town council who have acknowledged this. Together, we wrote a joint statement which was to be read tonight to correct that misinformation, but I was told yesterday it would not be read as planned. I put my trust and faith in the town leaders, and again, they have let me down. I have the statement here, but I have decided instead of reading it myself, I would ask this board for their input. I agree with the town. We all want nothing more than for this matter to be put behind us, and I hope that coming here tonight, this board will work to address my concerns. And I just want to say that I really hate that the town put me in a position where I have to come here when all I asked them to do was to honor their word to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Pat Stevens, 63 Mechanic Street. I was wondering if the board had any discussions about lowering the speed limit in town.
They have been.
So we don't meet outside this table, so,
Right.
No, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
at one of our future meetings, I think we should really look into making a traffic calming corridor between Chestnut Street and the center of the Common. We have spoken briefly about it. I spoke to Lieutenant Grace about it. And I think we have to address this once and for all. I think we have to address Mechanic Street, and I think we have to address Beach Street. So I think this needs to be an agenda item in the upcoming session.
And I think that's where, I think that's where it has to be. It has to be an agenda item, because coming in at citizens' input, we can't discuss with anybody that comes in on citizens' input, because it's not an agenda item. We hear what you have to say.
Okay.
But let's put it as an agenda item,
Okay.
so we can discuss it openly and get feedback from certainly the board, our town administrators, and anybody else in the audience that wants to contribute.
Okay, thank you.
We have looked into traffic calming measures internally, but we have not come up with a formal plan, but we're looking at certain measures that can help.
And in fairness, I've reached out to Chief Baker, Lieutenant Grace, and they said that they did finally contact you, that there are some, I don't know the technical terms, but there's some traffic counting survey that's going on right now. So just in fairness, Mrs. Stevens, there is definitely movement and contact, and I think we need that baseline information in order to have the conversation that needs to happen at the table.
I did talk with Chief Baker 2 weeks ago when I was here.
So just to add, I remember, and I agree with Mark, that it's difficult for us to listen, and sometimes we look like idiots just staring at you, but that's the way that the town government is. If you come up with an item that doesn't allow somebody at home to come in here and speak, and we make decisions and talk about it, it's a violation of the open meeting law.
Okay, all right.
So sometimes when you get blank stares, like for instance, I had a lot to say when Heather came up, and I'm restricted.
Okay, all right.
But a couple years ago, there was a neighborhood that was off of 140 as you come in, going 140 south before you get to the Common off of Gilmore Street, one of those rights across from where you live.
Yep.
And basically, their neighborhood got together, and they said, look, we've got an issue. 140 backs up, everyone's cutting through
yeah.
a ridiculously residential curve.
Okay.
So it was an agenda item where the neighborhood came and they spoke. We could hear everybody.
So is that something I have to put
Well,
in?
but it was also hand in hand with the police chief that sent out an officer to do studies to look at it and came back with some educated distances and kind of educated the board and say, these are your options.
Okay.
We worked with the neighbors, we implemented it. One shortcoming is we did ask them to come back and tell us how it was going, and we never heard from them after. So I think it's a longer process than coming in here and just saying, can you lower the speed limit? Because we've done that, and other towns have done it, and the tickets to the neighbors go up, the complaints go up. If it's too low, it's out of our jurisdiction, we shouldn't have done it, type thing. So it's not as easy as changing a sign, and it is a process, so.
Okay.
And having, just lastly, you've been in here at least 6 times, and I've seen you've done signs. To get to the point where we're not directing her to do something differently, if we didn't have this discussion, you would have probably been here next month asking
Yeah,
the
it
same question.
started 2 years ago,
Yeah,
and then I
so.
backed off.
Yeah, so
I'm
I
back.
apologize for that. It should have
That's
been
okay.
handled a little differently,
All
I
right.
guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, 1 minute, I recognize Joe next, sorry.
Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Hello. I did want to say thank you to all of us. Oh, my
Mention who
name,
you are and where you
my
live.
name is Joan, everyone knows me.
We do.
Joan Gallivan. I now live at 9 Cannon Forge Drive in Foxborough. I've been here for 54 years. Okay, I first wanted to say thank you to our Board of Selectmen and other elected officials who work so hard for our town. It's a small town with big town problems sometimes, and anyway, you do give a great deal, and I'm very grateful for it, and thank you for all my fellow townspeople that appreciate it too, that don't get here. I'm concerned this year, and I probably have other years, and sometimes I have time to address it, but we have an annual warrant each year, and I like to go as an informed voter or a citizen. And it's really hard to do. The Foxborough Reporter used to cover it quite well, and they sort of do, but, it's bits and pieces. But you really, I know they probably have earlier meetings in each of the areas. So, I'm looking at some planning board issues, bylaws for the signs, big changes, and parking, and there's some really big budget items for the water sewer. I don't know, was it for a whole new well or something, but it was some very big, what the heck one was it? Like, let me see, how many $1 million or whatever.
Million, Article 24,
It was what?
my article.
How many million?
11 million.
Article 24, she said, if you flip.
Anyway, there's some big items, and then as well as your regular budget, and then there's some items that you people have some control over too. So I just wondered if we had any type of pre-meeting that people could go to. I can't remember if we used to in the olden days or not, or some place, because you don't get interested in it until it's a little bit closer, like near election time. And it's hard to have the meeting, I don't know. We had one meeting on like the bylaw or the signs or something. The planning board had a meeting a long time ago. I don't know, it was 6 months ago. So I think it's hard, but I think when it gets closer, I don't know whether the advisory committee could organize it or what, but I think there should be someplace where we could, I know it's hard, people might not be available, but I don't know, I end up having to call people on the phone, you, someone in charge of the departments, trying to get little answers, and then at town meeting, I try to slow things down, and I go up and sometimes even ask similar questions, just to make sure people understand it too, because I think that that's important.
Joan, Bill's got,
So, anyway, I worked at this, and I'm trying to figure out here, I'm looking, I've got one early, it's a preliminary draft, and it might not even be correct, so I'll look again, but just wondered what we could do about letting us be a little more informed when we get there to the town meeting.
So it's, it's a very good thought. I can tell you that I've worked in a couple other communities where we actually used to have a session called pre-town meeting. And we go through virtually every one of the articles, go over them and help offer some major explanations for how the articles came together, answer some questions before the meeting so the town meeting members would be better informed about the issues. That has never come to pass here because every town has different traditions. So it's not something that has been brought to the attention of this board before or has been something that has even brought to my attention in terms of what's been needed. But you raise a very valid point because I think you're right that a lot of people show up at town meeting not really having a full understanding of the issues and the conversations that actually take place over several months. So I think to recap that, and to do it on a town meeting floor is hard to do because people sort of get lost in the different dynamics of the meeting. So I think having just a meeting to help explain things. I've actually, in the past, have tried to go through the warrants on a television show, a cable show that I do periodically that I will do, and I'm planning to do one again for the coming weeks. That'll be before town meeting to help go through the explanations. But I think you raise a valid point, that I think education for voters to go to that meeting is, I think, helpful and actually helps to move the meeting along. So it's a good
Those
point.
are some ideas, anyway. I don't know if you people can precipitate it or initiate it, or maybe you're the only ones that can. I know there's a lot of independent boards, so you don't have control over them, but at least, maybe it could start here that you think we need to do something more, and,
great point, Joan.
okay?
It's probably a little late to do it this year, but
But
certainly.
Write a
Point,
letter,
point, point.
should I write a
But
follow-up
looking for the
letter and
future.
say, thank you for letting me speak at the
Selectmen's
citizens' input at the Selectmen's meeting. I got some response, and I hope that you will, whatever, so that they have something written in writing for it.
Sure.
It's actually a very good
Yeah.
thought.
I'll
If
send
I
it
may
to
just-
the board and
On the flip
CC.
side, Joan, if you do have questions before, I think it's helpful to ask around, you know who to go to so that we don't get kind of stalled on the floor, because, we got to make sure people come to town meeting and we want to try to keep it, as much research
Always.
as we can do ahead of time is always helpful.
Well, I told you, I do it on purpose often. I mean, I may have a much better idea, but I think it's something that should be slowed down and take some more thought. And sometimes people haven't even read them before they get there. This gives them a couple of minutes to kind of peek at it. It happens. So I just,
Mrs. Gallivan, if I could just try and also offer another perspective as well. Thank you for coming in. It's good to see you. The advisory committee meets throughout the winter, as many people know, and those are open public meetings, and that's a good way. Some people do come, And they do a great job of actually, threshing out the issues. They go through every article, they go through all the budget items. It can
I'd like to have one that has everything all at once. That would be all spread out. And I know they do have one meeting where they vote on most everything.
Right.
But I
right.
also think that, well, I guess you could hear it, but I think you need more.
Right. What I was gonna,
It'd be hard to go to that many, if there was one
right,
or two that were more geared to that,
Sure.
so that they also could have some questions.
what I was gonna offer.
I realize the advisory would be great to
Right,
attend and also
right.
be part of, too, but.
So I know sometimes if people are following a particular issue that's of interest to them, that's in front of the Board of Selectmen, they can't make it because these meetings, are late for some people, especially for the elderly who may not get out after dark, they'll be able to follow them on cable access and follow a particular issue or a couple of issues. Maybe in the future sometime, obviously not for this year, but maybe sometime in the future, that would be something that would be available, because the advisory committee does good work. They do hard work. They really investigate the issues, and I think they're working on behalf of the citizens. And I think that may be a way in some future years that folks could follow the process and see, what the discussion, because I think the discussion behind the issues is important, especially, as you mentioned, some of the larger bond issues, $11 million, planning board issues. There's a lot of research that goes into those. And it's not easy to go to every department and research, but that might be something for the town to look at in the future. As far as the one night for the advisory committee to go through and vote it, that usually actually is a couple of nights anyways, where we've got 26 articles this time. I think it was over 2 or 3 nights. I think 2 nights this time. But just wanted to offer that to you.
Yeah, that would be valuable, too.
Joan, are you going to the town meeting? I'm just trying to gauge my time. Are you going to be? Get kids to get home.
Number of nights.
Thank you, Joan.
See you in a few weeks.
All right.
I say that with love. The first time I was actually in the AdCom, she called up and she went to the floor and yelled at me for speaking too much.
Hello. My name is Allison Bancroft. My husband and I are the homeowners at 22 Market Street, which is the house that's directly across the street from the Keating Funeral Home. I realize that the redevelopment project is not on the agenda for this evening, but I wanted to come and just request that it be put on the Selectmen's agenda. After the town election, I realize that there is a new member that's going to be joining the board that hasn't had an opportunity to see the presentations of the developers. And I think it's important also to have some extra time for the residents to come in and express their opinions about the proposals. I did want to just touch on a couple of my issues. I know I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. They relate to the size of the Doug King proposal and also to the current parking issues that are already impacting the neighborhood. The proposal by Doug King seeks to replace the 2-story funeral home with what is essentially a 5-story apartment complex. It's disproportionate to the neighborhood. It would tower over my home and all of the other residential homes in the area. It's directly across the street from an old church. My neighborhood is also an old, not necessarily designated historic area, but my house was built in 1855. There are a lot of older homes. This building would tower above it. It's got a parking lot on the first floor, then 3 stories of apartments on top of it, and then a roof line. It's way bigger than anything in the area. And it would direct all of the traffic onto Market Street to go into the parking lot that Doug King has proposed. About the parking, there is currently an issue in the town common in general and in my neighborhood with parking. One restaurant recently opened. Between that, the library, the theater, and the businesses, there's literally no parking. People are parked all around my house, down every side street. This proposal by Doug King He proposes 15 units with only 15 parking spots. I don't think he'll be able to get those 15 parking spots into his parking lot. But even if he did, you have 15 couples, that's 30 people living in that apartment building. You can have 15 spots for those people. There'll be 15 residents of that building who will need parking. They'll take it around the town common, they'll take it around the businesses, and they'll take it in the residential neighborhoods. The theater already has no parking at all. And I think that the town should really think about making the parking issues in the neighborhood better when they have the chance with this redevelopment and not making it worse. The Doug King proposal also has a restaurant with 11 spots behind. I imagine there's more than 11 employees who work at that restaurant, not to mention the patrons. So these are just a few of the issues that have occurred to me. I wrote an email, but I hadn't heard back from any of the selectmen. So I thought I'd just get on public record, ask that it be put back on the agenda. I'd like to come in again. I will write a letter as well, hopefully with neighbors as well. And I hope that it can be an issue of further discussion. We've been waiting a long time for that area to be developed, and I'd like to have the town put in the time and effort to make sure that it's done well and done right, and that this project is the beginning of the redevelopment in the common, in the center of Foxborough, and it should be the best. It's the one that the town has the most input in. The town should be working with the contractors to develop a design that's best for the townspeople. And it's going to be the standard upon which all other development in the common is going to be based. So it should be good, and we should spend the time to make sure that there's a right fit between the town and the developer, and make sure that what goes there is actually high quality and appropriate for the town.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Considering there's only one board member that's going to bring this message forward, because you can't vote on it, and you're not voting on it, and I'll be gone.
It's all on you,
It's all
Dave.
you, Dave.
I heard you.
Anybody? Anybody? Steph?
Oh, my God.
All right, so Steph McGowan, 19 Rhodes Lane. 3 quick things. I know it runs in my head every day, and I've thought a couple times to come up with citizens' input, and I know I heard David mention it before. And I don't think it's the town's responsibility. I think it might be with the railroad tracks. Just wondering if we can find out when the tracks that are just going down Cocasta Street could be fixed, because travel it every day. I know, I think David mentioned it before about having, losing tires and
4 tires.
whatnot. And, yeah, I think I've gone through 2 alignments in this car. It's just like boom, boom, boom. Even if you go fast, if you go slow, it's just a mess. So that's number 1. Number 2, Ms. Gallivan, I just want to let you know that I'm on advisory committee, and sometimes the articles are still confusing to me. And it's over months. And I think what Bill mentioned, that maybe if we could have one big night that residents could come, and possibly AdCom could be here, the selectmen could be here, and then it would probably make town meeting go. But you're not alone, because I've sit through and I've listened to department heads, and even sometimes afterwards, when I sit down to read them, a couple of them I have to write up. You really, it's a lot to take in. So you're not by yourself. I'm there, and it still can be confusing. So that would be great, Bill, if maybe there is something in the future that we could do would help residents before town meeting. And lastly, I just wanted to publicly thank Jim DeVellis for all. I was just sitting here thinking like, oh, this is your last official meeting, so unless you decide to hop back on at some other point down the road. But anyhow, thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
As all of our selectmen do, y'all do a great job, and just wanted to publicly thank you for your service, and I'm sure you'll be involved in lots of other things going on in town. But anyhow, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
All righty. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one response to the work on the tracks is supposed to be done this summer. So it's, we've already been informed by that, so it's supposed to be done this
I've thought
year.
about it a million times as I
Yep.
go over, and
I think
We've
three
been
more
informed,
streets, right?
yeah, they're gonna do 3 more crossings this summer. And,
some of them, they
and
fix
I
some of
think,
them, they're wonderful. Yeah.
I think
Thank you,
Roger,
Bill.
we don't have an exact date yet, but
I didn't even see Roger. I didn't even see Roger.
Is it, they're gonna be, well, I've just been informed it might be November now, so,
Mass Rail is
taking on that project.
taking baby steps right now, so. But there are at least 3 more that need to be done.
Right.
Including ours down on Oak Street, which is about as bad as Pocasset, except Pocasset is crossing a 4-lane intersection.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, that's not town property, so we cannot do those repairs. That has to be done by the rail and by the state. And by the state.
Roger, I
Right.
thought maybe you guys, when you're having some type of discussion with the railroad.
But we have had that conversation, and they do have a schedule, and they have been repairing them in the
Yeah.
past few years, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
My name is Kathy Scollins. I live at 3 Ridgewood Path. I sent each board member and Mr. Keegan a letter over the weekend, and I wanted to confirm that you all received it.
Yes.
I hope that you will seriously consider the concerns I raised related to the need for developing norms and protocols for behavior expectations for the Board of Selectmen when interacting with town employees. I understand that this is not typically a problem, but as the board and town manager are fully aware, one of the board members had some serious infractions when interacting with a town employee. It is my hope that safeguards will be put in place to ensure that this does not occur again. I am confident that the new board will work in a positive manner, and I am hopeful that you will develop a system to ensure positive communication, respect, and adherence to all existing policies on proper and civil conduct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for citizens' input? All righty, next agenda item, Foxborough Cleanup Day, Committee. Day.
Thanks for having us.
Aye.
When I was here, Tina Bellinger, Foxborough Cleanup Day Committee.
AJ Dooley, 75 Ridge Road.
When I was here on March 19th to request approval for our date last Saturday, Chris Mitchell asked if we would come back to give an update, so we are back to give an update on the success of Cleanup Foxborough Day this past Saturday.
So, as you know, last Saturday we ran our 7th annual Cleanup Foxborough Day, which is amazing that it's been going on for 7 years. Everything went great. I can't think of, a better way to go out and spend time, a few hours in the morning just to make the town a little bit better. And I don't know exactly what the numbers were, but it was somewhere in the
I think we had about 250
250 volunteers, and probably maybe even a little bit more, because I think that there are some people who just go out and do it and really don't get a chance to go down and grab the T-shirts and stuff like that. Some people were texting me that I know didn't even show up to get T-shirts, telling me where there was trash throughout the town. There was probably about 3 ton of trash picked up this year, which is down compared to the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that is because we're doing it each year, and we've gotten some of the stuff that had been there for so long. In the future, I do want to try to get the youth out there a little bit more, especially the high school kids, and just get them to understand that, this is their community and that they need to be involved in this stuff. And it's good on college applications and stuff like that. So I'm really going to get back to really pushing that. But other than that, I think it was a great day, and I'm going to continue to keep doing it if you guys allow.
It's truly a community effort. I have a long list of people that contribute. I'm not going to read it because I know you're already off your agenda time. So and I wrote a letter to the reporter this week thanking everybody. But really, we had volunteers that were 6 months old to 96 years old. So everyone participates, and everyone contributes, from the fire department donating the use of their grill, to our fish and game guys cooking the food, to Jake and Joe's donating the food, the New England Patriots coming. We had Keontae Davis and Derek Rivers, and they had a blast talking to people and just being a part of our Foxborough community. And we do things our own Foxborough way here. And it's a great way, I think, to begin in springtime, cleaning up our town, but we're heading into a whole bunch of really great community events, and our town is ready for it, thanks to AJ and his staff and all of the volunteers who showed up to pick up 3 tons of trash around town. So we're ready for Memorial Day and Founder's Day and concerts on the Common and the farmers market and everything else that is going to happen this spring and summer. It's great.
You know, it's pretty cool watching 250 people in their fluorescent orange shirts all around town, cleaning it up. It's really great. And then after that, seeing the kids wearing their T-shirts at the booth, or you know that they it's sort of like a little badge of honor that they help clean up Foxborough on that particular day.
It wasn't the best weather on Saturday either, so we really appreciated everyone who showed up. You know, it rained at one point, but then the sun came out, it cleared up, it was good. I think our appointments are up tomorrow, so if you choose to reappoint AJ and myself, and Joey Garrity wanted to be here tonight but couldn't. He definitely would like to participate again next year, and also Lori Bubensik, who's been a big help with organizing and helping us out. So we've got a good little core group, and we'll keep things going on Clean Up Foxborough Day if you want us to.
Absolutely. Great.
Do you have any other questions for us?
I just have a motion. So move to reappoint the members of the Foxborough Cleanup Day Committee for a 1-year term, expiring May 1st, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
With gratitude.
Thank you very much.
Before we leave, just very briefly, I had checked with Mark before the meeting. I wanted to extend my thanks to Jim for his service. When I joined the advisory committee in 2009, Jim was the chair at that time, and I know I have learned a lot about public service from you, and I have sat in front of you at this table many times. We've served on joint committees and we've worked on a few projects together in town. Particularly the flagpole was a lot of fun. So 9 years is a long year, a lot of time, a lot of energy to serve on a board, and years before that on the advisory committee. I know you'll continue to be involved in Foxborough, but thank you
Thank
for
you,
all the
Tina.
time you've
Appreciate
spent.
that.
So.
I would like to say thank you as well, Jim. Thank you for your service and thank you for our friendship.
And thank you for the T-shirt you're gonna. No, sincerely, thank you. And I know people focus on the day, but you guys start working on that event months in advance with the donations and the food and that stuff. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you to everybody who contributed, sponsored, and showed up to pick up trash. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for your efforts. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 7:15, public hearing, Red Robin, change of officers.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrew Upton, representing Red Robin, the alcohol licensee. We are applying to change the president and secretary of the corporation. They work in Greenwood Village, Colorado. There will be only a change at the corporate headquarters as required by the ABCC. No change to any aspect of the operation here in Foxborough or any element of any Red Robin in Massachusetts.
Easy enough. Anybody have any questions? No.
No, that's okay. Standard stuff.
Okay,
All right,
you're on.
all right, move
Public
to.
hearing.
Oh,
Public hearing.
it's up.
No, I don't know.
Should we have, was this a,
I don't have it as a public hearing.
Listed as a public hearing.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's no
Yes.
public hearing documents, there's no
No,
public
this-
hearing notice, there's no,
No, I don't think this is a public hearing. This is just an action that requires, it's not a public hearing, it's just it's a change of manager.
Okay.
There's
Misnoted
no-
in
there's no
the
requirement.
agenda.
It says public hearing on the
yeah,
agenda.
it looks like
but
it's
okay.
a little bit of a variance.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, so with that, any concerns to move to a motion? Okay, all right, move to approve Red Robin application for change of officers.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Waxy O'Connor's liquor license update. Would that be you, Bill?
Yeah, so I think Frank, Mr. Spillane is going
Oh, okay,
to
sorry.
respond to this issue, so. The board we recall that several months ago, the Waxy O'Connor ceased to operate here in Foxborough, and that the board at that time held a hearing on the retrieval of the license, and that they offered Waxy's 6-month period of time to try and work out the details of how that license would be disposed of or returned to the town. I know that council will explain to you the steps they have taken up to this point. Also, we were following up on the payment of outstanding taxes, et cetera, fees to the town. And I do believe as of this moment, everything is paid up to date. And I know that council will speak to that issue as well. So without further ado, I'll defer most of my comments back to Mr. Spillane, who can represent his client in this matter.
So it was a few months ago that we came in for our hearing. Since that time, both Waxy's and the landlord have been in negotiations with a number of different entities that are interested in moving into it. I know of at least 4 that they've been talking with. They've come down to pretty much one. All 3 entities are in negotiations right now. I think it's moving forward well. I anticipate having some kind of an agreement within the next week or 2, from what I'm understanding. I forgot to mention that Paul McKenna would like to have been here, but he had a prior engagement in Ireland for business and pleasure. So by the time we knew about this meeting, he had already scheduled that. So he couldn't come back for that, but would like to have been here. So again, we've been in negotiations with 4. There were other entities that were interested, but there were 4 main ones. And the current one that's in serious negotiations, I anticipate some type of agreement coming forward. At that time, within that agreement, there'll be an understanding of when Waxy's will forward the liquor license to the town so that the new entity can file for that license. We've brought all of the outstanding debts up to date. They'll tell you they weren't all timely, but we did get them all in and pay any fees that were associated with them, so they're up to date on that. We anticipate once the filing occurs, everything will continue to be up to date as is required with any licensing application. So we do anticipate something coming forward. I talked with both Paul McKenna and Vince O'Neill, who's the owner of the retail space, and they're both working diligently with the third party, trying to bring something together. And from speaking with both of them, I believe something is going to be worked out. So I do anticipate something coming forward.
Great. Any questions?
Just any anticipation of a timeline? I know negotiations are fluid and you don't want to predict a time, but is it?
Everybody promised me the agreement would be, I'd have it by today, and I didn't believe any of them. We don't have an agreement. So, and that's why I say, I think, that, they're working hard to get that agreed on. Again, the entity wants to only pay so much. That payment amount has to be split between both the landlord and Waxy's.
Right.
So Waxy's has the right to the space and the license at this point at least. And, but it's in everyone's best interest to work it out. And I think they will all work it out. So I really do anticipate, if I had to put a guess timeline on it, I'd say 2 weeks. But they were telling me that they thought I'd have.
We'll say 30 days.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And then there's going to have to be a filing and agreed return of the license.
They are motivated to try and get this resolved. I don't think there's any question about that.
Right.
And I think that in the new potential operator is motivated to get going here as well. So that's the good news, is that both sides are interested in getting this issue in this manner resolved.
It's in everyone's best interest to work it out, and I think they all want to work it out.
Are they motivated to do it within the 6 months? I know there was talk about 6 months at first, too, and we're coming up on that.
I think there is a motivation to it. I think particularly from Waxy's side to try and get it cleared up, because they know that they have outstanding things that they want to pay, I'm sure, and then by resolving this matter, I think this issue will help get them resolved on various fronts.
Yeah, they have the right to license, and there's a 6-month grace period. They also have control of the leased premises, you know, on a lease agreement. So there's a lot of things that have to be worked out.
Right.
But again, you know, I just keep looking at, it's in everybody's best interest, once they found the right tenant for the space, both the landlord and Waxy's are in agreement on that, at least with this entity, that it's going to be worked out.
So just to give the board perspective on the timeline, this hearing was held on 2/5/2019. So we're about 2 months into that 6-month period at this point, a little beyond that. So clearly, I think I fully expect the next time that we will be seeing Mr. Spillane on this matter will be to look at a transfer of license situation, so.
Is that how it works, Bill? The license just transfers, or does it come back to us and we
They'll have to apply for a new license for the premises, but the important thing, though, is that that license is fully resolved, because they can't license two premises, you can't have two licenses on the same premises, so it really is important to get that matter resolved, and we fully expect that that will be the case.
With this license, it's specific for the site, so it can't go anywhere but Chestnut Green. It has to be returned back to the town for you to be reissued.
Right.
So it's not like, you know, just a regular license that can be transferred, so that it has to be transferred back to you.
Right.
And then reissued. And Bill and I have conversations with regard to that as to how to do that as smoothly as possible. Because, you know, there's a little tug of war with regard to, Waxy's doesn't want to give up the license until it absolutely is going to get paid, but it can't do it without them getting their license to do the transfer. So it's a little different than the normal license, because it's site-specific, because it was granted under specific legislation.
Right, I think most of our licenses now are, we call it node-specific.
Correct.
I think we only have one townwide license.
One, possibly a second, if I'm not mistaken.
Did you mean available or out there?
Yes, I think there are two. I believe the one that was at, if Toby Keith's was a townwide license, and that just came back to us. And the other one, we had one that we had in reserve. And so we issued, the one that was issued to Toby Keith's, so the new 6-string, is node specific.
Right.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Thank you, Frank.
Okay,
Thanks for the
thank you.
update.
And, you know, I'll keep Bill up to date, and he and I are working together to have this go as smoothly as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, the Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Committee appointments.
Whoever's phone is on, just dinging over and over, do you mind just shutting it off? It's like that buzzing speaker.
Chief O'Leary.
Chief, is it you? I didn't know where it was coming from.
I was joking. I was gonna blame Joni.
Guess we're ready. Well, good evening. We have several members that resigned recently from our committee. One being Jeff Downs. He was a member from start 6 years ago, provided a bridge between the committee and all the youth sports groups. First as a permanent member of the rec committee, then as a voluntary associate member of the rec board, providing a link between our two worlds. He set up a system in conjunction with the school tech staff for smooth registration and tracking of our trainings. He also did research to find a great many states, frankly, putting us to shame when it comes to mandatory reporting in the associated trainings and accountability. We use this research as backup when pursuing our petition now before the legislature. Unfortunately, his work responsibilities have changed. Good for him, but not for us, making it impossible to balance everything. We are all thankful for his contributions to our committee. Second member that resigned was Nancy Stockwell. Although her tenure was relatively short, she stepped forward when Vicki Lowe couldn't balance all that she had on her plate and provided an important link from our committee and a very vibrant senior group. She, by nature, is a very quiet and reserved person, but I found out she can be very insightful and well thought out in her opinions concerning our mission. She came out of her shell and became a person for details, which I sometimes need to occasionally rein me in. Fortunately, she must pull back some from her commitments for personal and health reasons. She will also be missed. Now, to take their places, we're putting forth Deb Giordano. We're recommending to take the rep position, as this will draw together two worlds, being youth sports and the rec department. It seems only fitting that we streamline our processes into trainings and accountability. The rec department permits the field use with all the various groups, but we have had a troublesome disconnect in accountability for trainings. Not that there have been any problems, but there seem to be some gaps we need to fill to make it a smoother process, as well as to make it easier for all. Debbie's experience with all these groups makes it a natural fit for our continued progress. To take the senior position, we're asking you to accept Mark Craig, who is a newcomer to our community, coming from an extensive background and bringing new programs and ideas to life in his prior jobs. Mark, when contacted to gauge his interest in fulfilling the social services slot, replied emphatically that he would be interested. I believe that his new outlook and enthusiasm will greatly help us in maintaining a vibrant interest in our mission and its focus going forward. These replacements, or rather additions, shall help us continue in our mission to continue to train and spread the awareness of the prevalence of child abuse in our community. As soon as we are lulled into complacency and take our foot off the pedal, so to speak, is when the eyes and ears are suddenly not there for the protection of our most vulnerable children. I am on this committee because I grew up in the Sheehan horrors and will never forget those that even today suffer from the effects. Also, maybe felt selfishly, I'm also vigilant as my children and grandchildren are growing up in this community, one which still has known to me several predators still in our midst. It is a job that we could never shy away from, as every day in the news there are still more incidents. We must never think it can only happen elsewhere.
Any questions?
Questions? I think they're two great choices. I mean, you know, we all know Deb, and, you know, she does, you know, what she does with the rec department is terrific, and being a, you know, point of contact and being on that committee, I think is very important, and Mark as well. I mean, he has a great background, he's in touch with the seniors, and, you know, he's doing a great job so far, so I think they're two great choices. Sorry to see Nancy and Jeff step down, but, you know, it'll continue. And like you guys always say, it may not be us, but we want to make sure this continues. And two great choices.
Thank you again for all the work you guys do. My question is just more procedural. The new appointments are to end on April 30th, and actually later today, we have 4 pages of appointments that are ending on May 1st. So, you know, May 1st is when there's kind of a lot of people up, so my suggestion was, is there any reason we don't make these appointments until May 1st, 2022, just to keep in line and, you know, easy down the road when appointing those bulk ones? Just a suggestion. It's one day.
I don't know if we can wait one day. That's kind of pushing.
Just wait a few hours, it'll be
You
all
okay with
set.
signing on for one more extra day?
All right.
They're doing that
Okay.
tonight.
January 1st.
They're doing them tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, our terms.
This won't affect your terms, it's just the new
Yeah,
ones that
I
they'd
think
be.
it's just the
I-
new ones that
Okay.
they would have to do.
Because our
and
terms
we'll just
normally
do it.
commence January 1st.
Right. does.
Yeah, this
And
is
they
in here
al-
is
They
April 30th.
alternate also. They
Yeah.
alternate the years.
So just a suggestion to bring it to May 1st, so
Yeah.
that we don't have to revisit
Yeah,
this
just-
separately.
just do 'em
It can go
tonight.
with all the rest of
Yeah.
them.
That's
fine,
absolutely.
Do them tonight when you're doing the rest.
Makes sense, okay.
And just add those two names in.
Well,
No, we need a
we
separate
could do
motion
it-
for this
We could
one.
do it now,
Yeah,
but
this is
just
just
change
a-
the date to May 1st.
Yeah, exactly.
When you make the
We'll say
motion.
effective May
Yeah.
1st.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'll make the
Do you-
motion.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
I'll
can-
make the motion, but before, I also want to let you know, last time you guys were in here, there was a discrepancy on the Sexual Abuse Awareness Committee, the way it's posted at the state and on our.
The name.
Yeah, and thank you to Bob Cutler. It was a mix-up on the state level, if you remember.
Right.
It was child sex abuse, and then at the 11th hour, the legal counsel told us to change it to safety, to not ruffle any feathers. And then we made a motion on the town floor to call sexual abuse awareness. So Bob Cutler reached out after that meeting out to the state Attorney General's office and fixed the mistake. And now if you go on our website, it's called the Foxborough Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Committee, which was not like that last month, so
Thank you for
bringing that
following
up.
up on that.
So I'll make a motion effective March 1st,
May 1st.
I'm sorry, May 1st, 2019, with respect to the youth side, to accept the resignation of Jeff Downs and appoint Deb Giordano. And for the senior,
Nancy Stockwell.
yeah, the
It's Human
senior.
Services.
So Human Services,
Services.
to accept the resignation of Nancy Stockwell and appoint Mark Craig, effective in May 2019, for
Second.
3 years.
Good. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Great. Congratulations, Deb.
Thanks, guys.
I just want to say thank you to Jim DeVellis for
This is
9
getting
years of his
uncomfortable,
service.
too.
I actually served with him for one term. It was the longest 3 years of my life, but
It's like a roasting.
I guess,
Because of Jim.
no, he will be coming back and continuing everything he does. I could go on about everything he's done, the Orpheum, the Lane property, the flagpole. I could go on, but I'm not gonna because I'll just embarrass him. Get his head bigger. I'm only kidding.
Thank you, I appreciate
He will
that.
be missed, and, but there is a life outside on the other side of that table that you can join me anytime.
Thank you, Linda, I appreciate that.
We do thank you. You were there when the Sheehan thing broke. You were there for us with the Sheehan survivors. You were instrumental in starting this committee, so we are grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good luck.
All right, the taxi limousine livery licenses, discussion on the moratorium and rates for fares.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a brief discussion because the way, there seems to be this lingering issue that we want to try and clarify with the board tonight, that we've actually had somebody inquire about a taxi service or livery service that they would like to open in the town, but there has been this lingering idea or notion that the board has put a moratorium on it. And so, and I would seem to recall it that it happened a while ago, and then Jim, I think you're probably the only one that, on the board that can remember this, but my recollection is that it happened several years ago. I'm talking like 2014 or 15 or in that range. So, but I don't know what the reason was. I can't recall what
I
the
have
reason
a
was.
vague recollection. I think there was maybe an influx of applications.
Okay.
I think you might have been on the board at the time.
Yeah.
And I think it was at the same time that there was a lot of angst about, it was maybe around the stadium, a lot of people on North Street parking at all those
Right.
places, putting them in and out. And then there was also some feedback from the people that had the existing licenses, that they've had an investment and they've been working there, and then we bringing new without rhyme and reason to it. So it was a little bit of everything that went on at that time. I don't know if it was a formal moratorium, but we stopped it.
Yeah.
I almost want to ask Chief O'Leary, he may have been involved with it too, but there was a lot of discussion. It wasn't just a quick decision. It's probably worth going back and looking to see.
Because we live in a different world today with Uber and Lyft.
It was before Uber.
And,
It
yeah,
was-
it was before Uber and
yeah.
Lyft. So I think now it's a different situation. And quite honestly, I can only remember 2 people in the time since then who have actually even come in and even inquired about it.
Mhm.
So, but the folks have tried to come in and seek a business license from the clerk's office, and the clerk's office has actually said, sorry, we're not providing them right now for that service. So I don't know.
And I think
if-
that's correct. I think we did stop it,
Okay.
probably indefinitely, only because there was no time on it, but it may be a good time to look at it. And
Right.
and I remember when Uber came in, there was a group that wanted us to outlaw Uber because it would be a free-for-all, and we met with them, not even knowing what Uber was, and, the sky didn't fall, so.
That's right, it's a different world, so. So I just, so I think this will be on a future agenda for discussion for, if you want to relook at the situation, but it's sort of like one of these things where I'm not really sure where you begin. I think we probably need to have a conversation about, how many licenses we have now, or how many taxi or livery service licenses are issued in the town currently, and how much of that is an impact. Obviously, if you talk to the businesses, they'll all say, look, we don't want any more competition, but by the same token, competition actually is good for the residents, so that's a consideration too. So I think what I'll do is to try and collect some more information about it. As far as the fees that people charge for this, there's no law that regulates the fees that they collect for these things, but what the town has done as tradition is asked for that they present their fee structure as part of their license request, and then the board determines if that's a reasonable license structure or not. But I don't think there's any particular standard for that legally in that regard. So this was, again, just to kind of bring up the conversation to see if, in fact, if there's a willingness on the board to revisit it and take a look at it again, because it has been quite some time. It's been 4 or 5 years.
And Bill, how does Uber and Lyft fit into that? If an Uber driver lives in Foxborough and wants to be a Uber driver, they would be considered a taxi and have to get licensure?
No, they're not regulated that way. They don't have a medallion or anything like that. It's a different type of structure, which is regulated through the company primarily, but some cities, I think, have some regulatory authority that they've imposed on Uber and Lyft type of services. The key area for us, of course, is Gillette Stadium, and they actually have areas designated for that type of use now, and they've adjusted their parking situation to accommodate that.
And just to clarify, so it's a license to have a business in this town, obviously, but
Right.
if I called Brockton Cab or whatever, they can still come to this town.
They can,
It's
right.
just that the license lives in this town.
Yes. And you issue the license from this town.
Do you know how many people have licenses?
I don't, actually. I
No,
was,
I mean,
because
something to think about.
it's been quite some time since we've done it, so I didn't get too deep into the research of it until there was an interest, and I wanted to at least bring it back to the board and say, look, where are you with this? It's been quite some time. Do you want to take a look at it again? And I'm happy to bring it back with a more detailed presentation if
Didn't we
necessary.
just approve one a couple of weeks ago?
It was a renewal.
Oh, just a renewal, okay.
Yeah.
But I think there was companies coming into Foxborough for the first time asking for a license. It wasn't Foxborough, and I think that when that started happening, I think we put the brakes on because there
Right.
was quite a few of them.
And it's interesting, a lot of people have not, since Uber and Lyft have taken over. So we've not seen that.
Good for discussion at a later date, with a little bit more research, sure.
Very good.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Annual town meeting warrant recommendations.
So we have before you tonight, there are a couple ways you can approach this. One is to go through each warrant article one by one. The board has not taken official positions on the warrant articles themselves. We've passed them along, and they've been researched by the advisory committee. And it's ultimately the advisory committee's recommendation that gets presented to town meeting. I think the board has traditionally made recommendations on each of the articles so that people know how the board stands on these articles. The budget's a little different this year because we actually started a new process this year, which we embarked upon, and where in fact I presented the budget. I went through the budget with the various department heads. Department heads gave me their proposed budgets. I made recommendations to this board. I presented it back in January. There wasn't a lot of reaction to it at that time. I think there was so then we brought it up again in February for further discussion. And there was some general discussion. I think, Leo, you brought up the issue about and I think Jim had a few comments as well, but I think it was more on the area of let's have a more strategic discussion about the budget.
Going forward.
Going
yeah.
forward, right? And I think, and I'm all ears about that. I think that's a great thing to do. So, but we would typically do that in the fall, August, September, perhaps, to do that before the budget season actually starts. So, I was under the impression that the board was supportive of the budget that we presented at that time, because I didn't hear anything to the contrary. So if I misunderstood that, but I hope I didn't, but certainly you have the ability to look at it again if you want. That's your prerogative. But I stand by the recommendations that I've made to you. The recommendations of I do have a couple changes to that tonight, by the way, that I want to go through, and I'll present those to you tonight. But this year, the advisory committee has a different recommendation from that, which is what I presented, as well as the Board of Selectmen's recommendation that we thought was the recommendation, and which is well within their prerogative to do. I mean, we have difference of opinion as to how that came about, but I'm not going to get into that discussion tonight. I think that there is, they well within their authority to make a different recommendation from what you or I can recommend. So I will say this, that there are a couple recommendations that the committee made, which I do support, actually. There are a couple of them with respect to the finance department, because there are positions. One relates to the position of a clerk that was tied into what we thought would be the monthly billing process for the water, but it turns out that we wouldn't even need that until next fiscal year, fiscal 2021, if in fact that were to go forward. The second is the fact that there was a reduction in the amount of money in the salary of the finance director's salary line, which I also am supportive of, because we're not going to need that amount of money, because this will be a new person starting the role, and obviously we wouldn't need as much money to recruit that person. I still think you need a healthy amount in there, only because it's a very, very limited field right now, and a very limited amount of individuals that will be looking at this position, but at least from what I'm told from several consultants, that right now it's a very limited field. But we'll have that conversation later on in the agenda about that. So, so let me go, if you will, indulge me for just a few minutes. I will go through the list of, and I'll defer to you, Mr. Chairman. How would you like to proceed at this point? I don't want to overstep.
Well, I think with the warrant articles, what we might want to do, because there's 26 of them, maybe take a motion to approve the warrants as a whole in total, with the exception of any we feel we need to discuss further. And I think one is Article 4, or Warrant 4, which is the budget. I think we should withhold that for the time being. And also number 17, because there's a slight conflict of interest with one of the board members. He can't vote in total. So I think we should just start with that, unless there's any questions, and then we'll go, maybe we'll do 17 next.
And then just refer back to, unless there's any discussion about any other items, that I'm certainly willing to do that.
Right.
My question is, if there's changes in Article 4, would that be reflected in any of the other articles that would have been previously approved? For instance, if Article 4, we take out X amount of dollars, but that relates to Article 2 that has a salary in it or something like that, are they completely independent?
I can't think of any at this point, but it may come up as we go through it. But there was, I think, at one point there was discussion about putting more money into stabilization, but that can't happen because the article itself gives a limit of $100,000. If the article did not have the limit in it, it could have been changed through the motion. But that article does the limit, and I've actually conferred that with the moderator, and he agrees with that position on that. So I'm not sure that any other articles are affected by that based upon where the budget is at this point.
The library contract, the dispatch contract, the fire contract, all of those wouldn't be?
I don't believe so, no. Because they're not, those are articles separate from the budget regardless.
Yeah, I didn't
So I'll
see
defer to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So if everybody's okay, Leah, I'll accept the motion.
So move to accept all articles in the annual town warrant, with the exception of Article 17 and Article 4.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. So let's maybe do 17 next, if you want to.
Just so it's for record, Article 17 was the citizens petition for an upgraded sign at the Orpheum, so I recused myself. I made the presentation and I recused myself from the vote. If there's gonna be discussion, I can sit out there, but if there's no discussion, I'll just stay here.
Accept the motion.
Okay, move to accept Article 17.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? And one abstain. Okay.
Abstain, yep.
Okay, and then,
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier, but your motion would be moved to recommend Article 17, because you've already accepted these
Oh, okay.
articles. All right,
So let me just go back and make both of those motions
yeah,
again, though.
I apologize for that.
So move to recommend all articles in the annual town warrant, with the exception of 17 and 4.
Second.
okay, all those in favor? You can vote for that one.
Yeah, you can vote.
17 you can't.
And then move to recommend Article 17.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? One abstain.
Abstain, so 3-0-1.
So should we move to approve 4 and then open it for discussion, or discuss it first? What would,
So before you, I first, if it's open for discussion at this point, I just want to point out a couple things for the edification and understanding. As I go through, I'll refer you to this document that we gave you tonight, which is this document here, which is the FY 2020 operating budget, Article 4, annual town meeting dated May 13th, okay? All right, you can just go to that document and we'll try and go through it one by one. So there are a total of, I believe, 10 differences, but there were a couple sub-differences within those different line budgets that require your attention. One is first is administration. There is the recommended amount from the town manager, and what I thought was the selectmen was the amount of $507,791 for salaries. Expenses was $74,170, for a total of $581,961. The recommended salary amount for the administration from the advisory committee is $481,291, and they agree with the $74,170 for a new total of $555,461. So I'm informed that relates to salaries. We have yet to see the actual minutes, but I'm informed that that's the case. So I'll defer to the board in terms of what your position is on that. And
So have you looked at, so the advisory committee sent us the 2020 operating budget, Article 4, with a comparison of the town manager's recommendation. Selectmen recommended all blank, and then the advisory. Does this, what you just handed out tonight, match up with what the advisory committee gave us? Because what I did is I went through the advisory committee recommendations and compared them to what we had here.
I'm not sure if I'm not familiar with your document, but this is what, I used pretty much that comparison. I used what was in the warrant article, and then I added a new column, which was the town manager's amended recommendations, because I have two amendments that I'm making to you based upon what I've seen from the advisory committee, which I think is consistent with what they're asking for. The other amendments are changes to going back to what I originally recommended to this board for your consideration. All right, so without knowing exactly what you're looking at, Jim, but that's why I wanted to use this doc. But there was about a $26,500 reduction in the salary line, and I think that's what was concerning to us, because it does affect our operational function in the office.
So
What was the basis of the reduction?
I don't know.
I reached out to Sue just to get, like, where was your head at with where the differences were? And for that one, it was concern over 4% raises year over year and then lowered salaries. So I don't know this is to be true, but there's some turnover, obviously with Mary Beth and now Mike here. There's always been the whole assistant town manager, HR function, different thoughts about it. I don't know where they were on that. But it was 4% year over year and just administrative and finance salaries.
So let me just point out to you that I'm actually asking for less money than I did last year in that line. The amount that was requested for the current fiscal year, fiscal 19, is $511,108. I'm asking for this fiscal year to be $507,791. And the raises for 4% is not actually true. It's not consistently across the board. The town manager's contract only calls for a 2.5% increase. The salary for other people who are still moving through the salary schedule do require the 2% step, provided they have good performance evaluation and a 2% cost of living. So that would amount to 4% in those instances. And I do believe out of the 3 out of the 4 people in the office, or 4 out of the 5 actually people in the office, they are those 4 are eligible, other than myself.
So I did get similar I reached out to ADCO. I went to one of the meetings and I did reach out, and I heard the same concern about the salaries. These are recurring expenses that keep going up over the years, and it's not just this year. This is a recurring theme, but it just kind of caught hold this year. It wasn't the entire administration budget. They were talking about when people left, new people coming on and getting higher salaries than what the AdCom expected, commensurate with their experience for. So just saying, this is what I'm hearing. So I've heard it from more than one person over at AdCom. So that the 4% and the higher salaries that just keep going. And the difference, I think it was about 26,000 is what they were reducing it from.
Right, so absent any conversation about this, it's unclear to us. So we, first of all, the salary for the assistant town manager is based on a schedule. The new assistant town manager does not make the same amount of money as the previous one. It was, he came in at a significantly lower amount. So I would say that that's not an accurate assessment if that's the case. And as I pointed out, I have 1 year remaining on my contract, and I would be eligible this year for a 2.5% increase.
So we would need to amend the advisory committee's recommendation on this line item?
Yes. So the amended amount that I offered was the same amount that I offered in my original recommendation. So I did not change that one. I kept my recommendation the same on that particular line item.
So, in this list, you got that one?
Yeah.
To just move right along, I would accept a motion to amend for discussion and vote. Because we have a better understanding of both sides now.
Well, do we?
I'll be frank with you. So this is the first time that we're collectively talking about the budget, and maybe it was a mistake, but every year, up until this year, we've had an Excel spreadsheet that has all the articles, when they were brought to us, when they were taken off, when we voted. So we're kind of behind the 8 ball now, trying to look at all these amendments, and we haven't really had discussions. So granted, the department heads came in.
We had the discussions back in January, though. And a lot of this has to do with the change in how we do things. You know, in the past, the advisory committee's gotten this information, and then we've gotten it afterwards. Once, this time, we made we had all the discussions earlier, if I remember correctly, and then sent it to advisory. They've done their stuff, and that leaves us this little window of 10 days for any discrepancies.
And that was, in fact, their request, was that the recommendations, that the budget that came from them was a recommended budget by the board and myself. So, I mean, that's why I assumed what I did, because we had conversations about it, and then we put it on for a second discussion in February. And we've actually had it on the agenda 9 different occasions.
But I don't,
Discussion.
yeah, but so we've got a dozen or 2 dozen warrant articles. This resonated in my mind, because when I presented the sign, which I recused myself, one of the members said, are we gonna vote tonight? And they said, no, we're gonna vote later. I've been waiting for this discussion to vote later. We haven't voted on any of it. So tonight, we voted on everything except for 2, and then we voted, the Article 17. So, granted, it's at the 11th hour, but we certainly could have sent this over to AdCom and then haven't had these discussions before tonight as well.
Well, they didn't want to do it that way, though. They asked for it to be done so the recommendations would go to them. That's why I presented it the way I did. I changed the process here based on their request.
So when did it go to the AdCom?
Back in January.
Okay. So recently, so when we got the $300,000 back from the health
Yep.
thing, where did that money go? That
I
went into
actually came back to you and offered you several amendments,
Mhm.
which we discussed back in late March, early April.
Okay, and we voted on that as
You
well?
voted on that.
I don't remember that.
I don't know if you actually voted on it. I presented
We
it to you,
keep
but
saying
nobody.
we voted on it, but
Well, no,
I'm
I
pretty
will
sure
say,
we didn't.
I take that back. I presented it to you, but nobody objected to it. And so that's my
There was
point, is like,
no objections and
Right.
a brief discussion.
right.
Was this the one where I said, well, why aren't we just saving the money? And we started to talk about it, but then, I mean, I wouldn't say that there was no objections. I, at that meeting, said, well, if we're saving all this, in this day and age, you never hear about saving on health insurance. So I think I said at that time, well, if we're saving, if we didn't need these things yesterday, just because we have the savings in healthcare, why are we?
I never said you never needed the things. I made cuts because I had to make a balanced budget.
I
So
guess I'm just
that's
saying,
the
I
issue.
don't recall it being presented, there being no concerns or questions, a vote being made. I guess I disagree with
There
that.
wasn't a vote taken, there was a discussion, but there was, at the end of the day, there's no objection. So when we decided to move the budget along, there were, I think, 5 or 6 different occasions where we had the budget as an agenda item. And there was very little discussion. There was some commentary. I mean, I know we had questions regarding the
Water
3 police officers, regarding dispatch. I know we had Mike come back
For the new position.
for the new positions.
Right.
But knowing the wage grids that we've done over the last 2 years and reducing the steps and everything, I thought I know I was comfortable with the budget, the balanced budget as presented. So,
And I think the catch-22 we're involved in is switching the protocol on how we did things. We didn't know AdCom was making the changes they made till less than 2 weeks ago. So.
But it's somewhat irrelevant to our decision.
Right.
Absolutely it is. They're an autonomous group. They came back with their recommendations. So we're sitting here now going forward on this article, on this warrant article, to get it voted on with some discrepancies. Do we, so.
And I understand what you're saying, but we got this tonight that says we need to do these motion amendments. I've always expected that when people get to town meeting, there's a the warrant articles are presented, the AdCom says this is what I recommend, and then there's also a column of what we recommend. Why are we changing our numbers tonight?
Only because the advisory committee made recommendations 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago.
Recommendations
to town meeting.
To town meeting.
Which were inconsistent with what the board had seen and what I had seen. And then when I looked at them, I said, you know something, I could actually agree with some of those. So that's why I put it before the board and for your consideration. I mean, you.
Understood, but so there's that one administration number that you said could be decreased.
Right.
What are all these motions here for?
So the additional motions that I'm proposing to you is that because the advisory committee's recommendations are the ones that go to town meeting. So what I'm asking the board to consider is that if you disagree with any of those motions that they've made for reducing the budget, then the only way you can fix that is to look at these proposed amendments. And those amendments can only be presented at town meeting. They won't be finalized, but I just want to know that whether if the board agrees or disagrees with these, because that's part of the process.
I guess my question would be, maybe this is like dumb it down basic question, but if everyone's saying we've already voted, that we've recommended our budget, if they're here in the line item, why, because AdCom made a recommendation, are we back here changing that?
Well, I prefer not to, be honest with you, but I just, my only point, the only thing that, if that's the case, then the only change I would make is the one where I agreed with their recommendation to reduce it.
We can vote to go forward with Article 4.
Right.
As presented by
the board.
By us.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we could.
Yeah.
You could, conceivably.
But
And
even
then- and
these
then-
other ones, like $213 for municipal building salaries,
Yeah.
I'm not following what.
That was a point, that was an issue pointed out during, by the advisory committee. That was, actually, I think what the moderator pointed out, that was an error that we needed to fix. So that
So
was
it's a
just-
mix of things we have to fix, a mix of changes that you have now, and then,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I come up and speak for a moment?
Oh, sorry.
Sure. It's Jim's last day, we're gonna let him get away with some stuff. I defer to Jim.
Some of these issues I'm talking about tonight kind of coming from me a little bit. One of the things I wanted to point out to you is it's this board's responsibility to vote a budget for all the departments that you're responsible for and forward that budget to the advisory committee. And I always use February 1st as the date, by February 1st. That's a requirement within the bylaw. So in the last number of years, what's been happening is the requested amount from the department heads has just been forwarded to the advisory committee. And the advisory committee was starting to get very frustrated because there'd be a number of new positions in there. Then over time, they'd be subtracted out.
I apologize, Frank, I don't wanna, but mention who you are in case someone
Oh, I'm
at
sorry.
home
Frank.
doesn't know who you are. We all do, but.
Frank Spillane, I'm the town moderator. And I,
And please speak up.
and I appoint the members of the advisory committee. And so it's your responsibility to vote a budget that is your budget, that you're responsible for, and that, you're gonna defend and forward it. Just like the schools, just like the library trustees, planning board, water and sewer commissioners. Forward that budget to the advisory committee for their review. Now, that hadn't been happening in the past. I started discussions with the administration a couple of years ago to get that changed, because there was real frustration on the advisory committee's part on that. Now, with regard to town meeting, when I met with the administration with regard to get ready for town meeting, I asked them to bring forward to the board the recommended changes by the advisory committee, so that the town can know your position on those, so that we can have a smooth town meeting. So if there are changes that the advisory committee is making that you're fine with, we don't have to do a hold on it. But any positions, any line items that you want to increase, I ask that, someone on the Board of Selectmen, they'll hold, and then you'll do a motion to amend that number to increase it to your requested one. So what he's asking you to do is take a position on each one of these changes that's being recommended by the advisory committee. So either you're not gonna hold it, or you're gonna hold it, so that town meeting can run smoothly, or as smoothly as we can get it.
As smooth as they're gonna get it, right?
You
under
know,
the circumstances.
so if the changes that Mr. Keegan is, comfortable with, recommended to you, then you don't have to hold that line item. But the ones that you do want to debate on town meeting, you have to make a motion to increase the advisory committee's number to your requested number. Because you're going to remember, the motion for a town meeting is the advisory committee's recommendation.
Right.
But they can't recommend any numbers any higher than yours. So your requested amount is the ceiling. So they can't go above that, but they can recommend something below that. In this case, they're doing it on Is it 12 line items, Bill? I can't remember.
It was 12 line items that they reduced.
So there's a possibility that you may want to hold 12 line items to increase it up to your requested amount. But let's say you're comfortable, and I'm just making up numbers, 4 of their changes. Well, now we're reduced it down to 8 line items. So that we'll have the motion, Bill and I are working on it together to have that, I hope one of you will be designated to hold it. You'll come forward, read the motion to increase it from the advisory committee's recommended to amount to your requested amount, or whatever the amount is that you want to push it up to. And then you can, explain to town meeting why you're doing that, just so that town meeting will run as smoothly as possible.
No, that was a great explanation, Fred.
Okay,
I've
so,
been practicing all night.
And you had the other thing too, wow.
I forgot all about it. I came here for this.
I'm sorry.
so the 12 changes, so these amendments of 12 amendments represent the 12 differences
Yes.
in the line items.
Well, with the exception
With
of
the
two.
exception of the
two.
municipal building, where we're actually making the amendment to lower it.
Right.
Everything else is increased, correct?
Yeah, and actually, on the finance department, I actually agreed with the reduction in two lines, or two areas. Actually, there's just one salary line, actually. It took up two situations, but I agreed with the recommendation of the advisory committee on that.
So you don't have to make an amendment
I
to
would
that.
not recommend that you
Oh,
make
I
a
see,
change in
okay.
that.
So it's 13, but one is just silent because we agree with it. There's no amendment needed.
Yeah, so I think there's actually a total of 10 different changes now.
Well,
Well, there's 12 on this.
Well, so
And a
maybe-
number
maybe
of
it's
those
11.
are capital outlay that are all
Yes,
separate ones,
that's right.
but in reality are kind of one.
Yes, well, they're in that.
Yeah, in that bucket.
budget
Yep,
line,
yep.
budget line, so to speak. Because in some, for instance, in the police department, there's two changes in that budget. There's a change to the salary line, and there's also a change to the capital line that I recommended to replace our cruiser, as well as and increase the overtime.
So that means 2 amendments.
Correct.
Even though it's just
Yeah,
one.
same thing with fire as well. Same thing with fire. Okay.
Yeah, but, so really, what we're looking to do here today then is just to review these 12 amendments.
And determine which ones you want to hold, and
Right.
then make a motion to increase it to your requested amount, or whatever the amount is you want to increase it.
So really, bottom line today is we should approve 4, but discuss the amendments? To
You
approve
could do
Article
that.
4,
That's
to
one way of
go
doing it, I
forward,
suppose, yeah.
because we're not changing it here.
Yeah.
No.
You're approving Article 4, but you really have no jurisdiction over the schools and other line items. You're really just working on your line items tonight.
Right, but
So just-
discussion would be these 12 on what we do
Correct.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah, because those are the differences between what's the advisory committee is recommending versus what you and I had worked on initially.
Right. Okay. Does everybody understand that? Did you get that?
So we're just going to visit each of these
Well,
that are called out here individually. No, we're not going to go through line by line.
I don't think we have to. And I think we could vote to send the warrant article on, but before we move on, discuss these 12 amendments. And we don't have to make decisions today.
We just have to decide.
We
if
have
we're
to
gonna-
decide if we're going to
it.
hold it or not and let the people decide on the floor.
Well, you want to take a position on every.
Oh, no, of course. And I think part of that's we're going to discuss today.
You don't want to move it on.
Move to
I've been hearing
recommend.
you guys have been moving on your budget. Take a position on your budget. It's your budget. Own it. No. That's what you guys did in January, from my understanding. You moved it on. You shouldn't move it
No,
on.
that was
You
done
should-
actually
you
in the
should-
last
you should-
month.
you
That was
should
done the
vote
last
it,
month.
And you should own it. It's your budget. Get behind it, agree with it. If things aren't in there that you disagree, talk about it and decide whether you want them in there or not.
Yeah, because I still stand, and I haven't gone back and read minutes, but I don't think that we have sat here as a board and voted on the budget. I disagree about that. I've
Yeah.
completely
And
disagree.
that hasn't been going on
Yeah.
for a few years.
Yeah, and
But prior, it was.
Yeah.
Prior it was. This board would vote the budget before it was moved on.
versus moving it on.
So,
Right. Well, for a number of years, it wasn't even voted. It wasn't, they would just show it to the selectmen and then just give it to the advisory committee, and it would be really what the department heads requested.
I'm going to
Not a
just
real-
respectfully disagree on that, because we actually did internal reviews on all budgets before we gave them to the selectmen.
This year?
No, previous to this. We did as well, and I made actually lowered recommendations on what they looked at, and ultimately, the board would ultimately approve those. But with this year,
Bill and I will disagree on that statement.
Okay.
Okay. We can agree to disagree, that's fine, that's fine. So, I want to get into a debate. We debate pretty well, but, not tonight. But so the point is that with respect to this situation now, Frank's explanation is actually pretty good. I mean, I agree with him that, we want to try and just finalize, show the agreement or disagreement that you have with the recommendations from the advisory committee and take your position. That way, it's clear to me, and quite honestly, I'll stand corrected if that's the case, but I firmly thought that the purpose of going through that process early on was to, look, I don't have any issues with the budget, let's move it on, and let's get it done. Well, if there was any issues, I thought I would have heard them by now.
Yeah, I think to Leah's point, we never actually took a formal vote. I think we discussed it.
Yeah.
I think we were okay with it. But I don't think we took a formal vote.
So if that's the case, then I'll stand corrected. Well,
And I think
don't
part of
think
it, I think part of it was, we wanted to have a full board to do it. There was some moving pieces here.
That was just a few weeks ago.
Yep.
Right.
But even going back, there was some moving pieces. But, I mean, we absolutely should have voted the budget, taken a formal vote.
Yeah, because when I read when I was away on vacation, when I came back and read all the newspaper articles that the selectmen had voted on the budget and then AdCom changed it, I did go back and look, because I started to be like, am I losing my
Yeah.
mind? I don't remember voting on that. So I think there was just a little discrepancy there.
So what's the board's pleasure at this point? I think
Let's take a vote on
we've
the
explained it.
budget.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, could I offer something, please? Would be okay?
Yeah, quickly.
Can I sit next to you, Frank? Would that be okay? Seeing how you pointed. So, I just want to take an opportunity to say that, same thing, I was away on vacation shortly after AdCom voted on the budget. And I was reading the paper too, and hearing things, the AdCom went rogue, the AdCom this. I just want everyone to remember that we live in this town too. And we want good services, and I don't want to tell you guys how you approach the budget, because that's up to you guys. But I will tell you that we spent a lot of time, and there's a lot of discussion. And we're okay if we disagree with what Bill recommended, or there's disagreement with you guys, that's fine. We're okay with it. The people who live in this town and pay the taxes making the final say. And it's not going to hurt any of our feelings that recommendations we have, if those don't come through, because in the end, we're a committee of 10 to 12 people, you're a committee of 5, but there's 11,000 people in this town that have the opportunity to come to town meeting, and they make the final decision. But I just want to take an opportunity to, we didn't just sit there and say, we're cutting this, we're cutting this. There was a lot of discussion, and I'll be honest with you, I mean no disrespect, but that if you guys don't find anything in that budget that you thought you could cut this much, that's surprising to me, that you guys wouldn't have further discussion. I'm not saying it have to be everything that we decided, but it does feel like the budget sometimes just get rubber stamped. I've only been on AdCom for 3 years. I'm enjoying it. Each year, I'm learning more. Each year, I'm understanding a little bit more of the process. And I don't claim to know it all inside and out, but there was a lot of time put into this. It wasn't just that we decided, I don't think we need this, and we live in this town. We want the good services. We want good people. And I just want to take an opportunity to say that. And in my opinion, I think more than you guys just reading Bill's recommendations and saying, okay, we're going to pass it off to AdCom, I can't believe that's all it would take is for you guys to pass it on to us. And then we came up with, I'm not saying you have to agree with what we did, but it's just a little bizarre that 2 separate boards, and you're just going to okay what came to you and then leave it up to us to make the hard decisions. I would just wish that you guys had a little more time. And actually, we vote that line by line. We go through each line, there's full discussion. A lot of them, we were in full agreement, some of them we weren't. And, you know, that's why it's good that we have different bodies making recommendations. I just wanted to make that clear, that nothing came easy to us. It was a lot of hard work and a lot of discussion, and we made our recommendations, and whatever the town decides, we're fine with. I just wanted you guys to, I know there's been a lot of discussion, in the paper says the board, you know, boards are split, you know, the AdCom is against what the town manager. That's what makes, you know, everything work, different opinions, and people have different things. So I just want you guys to know, it wasn't a very easy decision. It's a lot of hard work and discussion to where we came from. And, you know, and if you guys are indifferent, that's fine too, but I think it deserves a little more discussion. Maybe it's too late this year, but for the Board of Selectmen just to get the recommendations and then say, okay, here you go. And it's hard for me to believe that you guys didn't see anything that could have been cut. That's all. And I'm saying that respectfully. You know, everybody has a different idea, you know, and we respectfully listen to all, you know, we love our fire chief, our police chiefs, our DPW. And I hope you guys are taking that in too. There wasn't any disrespect. We saw it a certain way, and whatever the town decides, we're okay with. Is that okay, Frank? You're not gonna slap my hand when I leave, but I just wanted people to know, it didn't come as an easy decision.
So I take offense to the fact that you say we rubber stamp it, okay?
I didn't say rubber stamp. I made
Oh,
sure I
you
didn't
did.
say rubber
You did.
stamp.
You
Did I?
did.
Did I? Okay, I stand corrected.
You know, we have discussions at the table, but I know for myself, I send that gentleman a ton of emails and a ton of questions asking about revenue, expenses. I email department heads. What's the impact if we cut, okay? I want to understand what the impact on services are, okay? So there's a lot of discussion that happens at the table, maybe not as much this year as there has been in the past, but there's a lot of research that goes in. I'm constantly looking at where the town fits in comparison to other communities across the board. I want to know where we sit with with the tax rate, okay? Where our average tax bill is in relation to services, okay? I want to compare where we are across the Commonwealth in comparison based on population and operating budget, and get a true comparison of where we are. I don't want to be at the top, I don't want to be at the bottom, I want to be somewhere in the middle. And as long as we maintain somewhere in the middle, both on taxes and being able to provide the services that the community, from what we understand, wants, and what our department heads can provide, that's what our goal is. And whether the town manager presents that budget to accomplish that, great. If he doesn't, and we need to cut it, we'll cut it. You know, we have financial policies that we adhere to that make sure as we're replenishing free cash, make sure we're contributing to the stabilization fund, make sure we're contributing to the overlay budget and the reserve budgets. All of that is in the budget, okay? We don't budget 100% of our revenue that we collect, okay? We budget what we know we're gonna collect, okay? And we balance the budget based on those known revenues. So we know that we have additional revenues that are coming in. Listen, I think it's prudent to not spend every single dime, and we don't, okay? I think it's prudent that we have stabilization funds and we fund that on a regular basis. That's why we have a AAA rating with Standard & Poor's. That's a requirement. That's part of our financial policies. So we adhere to our financial policies. We hold the administration accountable for those financial policies. We welcome the discussion and the input from AdCom. I almost think that we should have a joint meeting. We have a joint meeting early on.
2 years, David, I've said that would be a great idea.
So next budget season, we'll have the joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen, School Committee, and we should have it with AdCom, and get our collective heads together in the beginning of the process so we don't run into this again. And I don't disagree with some of the southern recommendations. I don't. But I think to do this on the front end is more productive than doing it on the back end.
And I would agree with you. And I do want to apologize. I said I didn't mean any disrespect, and I did mean that. I do have respect for this board. Like I said, so I've been hearing a lot too, and the word rogue has been said.
It's not road.
You know, I just,
You're
yeah.
doing what you're supposed to
Well, and
do.
that's what, but the paper's quoted, and the town manager was quoted saying that we didn't have the right to do what we did. So it's okay if we disagree, I just want to make sure that, that you guys knew, we had a process too. And it spent many, many hours too, and so, well, I'm gonna leave it at that, because I didn't mean any disrespect, but I thought it should be known that the decisions we made, some came very easily and some didn't, and some were unanimous and some weren't. But I just didn't want anyone to think that, we want what everybody wants. We live in this town too.
And so do we. We pay the same taxes that you guys do,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
everybody else in the community. So, but we also want to make sure that our first responders have everything that they need to provide the services to the community. We want to make sure that they have the equipment. The rec department has what they need. The seniors have what they need. So, there's a lot that goes into it. We just don't rubber stamp it. I know you didn't mean any disrespect. I just
Yeah.
wish you used a different term.
Yeah.
That's all.
And so I kind of told myself to come up here and not say rubber stamp, and obviously, it's a term that keeps being said.
Yeah.
But anyhow, like I said, I just wanted to clear the air a little bit, and it seems like the paper's reporting that boards and committees are on either side, that's all. That's all.
Unless you're here, you can't get, no disrespect to Jeff, you can't get the true gist of what's going on in the
Yeah.
paper. You gotta be here.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, just one point, if I could just make one point, because I think it's important that everybody understands this, because that's why I want to say it on TV. I want to be absolutely 100% clear about this. I think absolutely that the advisory committee can make a different recommendation. Absolutely within your authority to do so. The problem I had was with the way it was done. That's the only issue I've had. And because I think all of the department heads have worked hard to try and present their cases for that, and to have those decisions made without the benefit of their input when they were made, I think is insulting to them. And I think the process, where the process broke down was the way it was done. And I think if it was done differently, and I hope that we can do it differently going forward, then I think it'll be better for everybody, and it'll be a better decision-making process.
Sure, absolutely. And the only thing I would disagree, Bill, is that we did listen to our department heads. So we made decisions however we want to make them. There was no disrespect to anybody, but we had listened, and we had, and we deliberated amongst ourselves on where we thought we could make some cuts. So, that's okay. It just, maybe as time goes on, the process will just get better and better. I just thought it was just to clear the air that, we all want to work good together. We all want the end result to be a great town. So,
Thank you.
yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, one of the problems here was the appearance of lack of transparency. And our community expects transparency. And it gets transparency from this board, from the administration, from the department heads, from the committees, boards, commissions. And this coming in late, these cuts coming in after 10:30, when I left that AdCom meeting on April 3rd, it just leaves with the appearance of lack of transparency. And that would be one of those things that we want to just work on in the future. And I think the idea of folks all getting together in August, September, to do a strategic, look at this, I think is a great idea. And I think we want to have dialogue. This community expects us to have dialogue and work out our differences. And if the budget numbers come in less than what the departments have requested, and less than what the town manager has balanced presented to you, then that is what it is. And we have to plan for July 1st of the next year. At this point, we don't even know exactly what those cuts mean, what the unintended consequences are, but we're going to operate come July 1st with whatever money we get. and we're going to deliver whatever services we can deliver. But we need that dialogue early.
Well, I think that it was a little bit of a learning curve with the way we did it this year too, you know, with us getting it first and AdCom getting it the way, you know, you and Sue had requested. But that threw us off our game a little bit too, getting this information a little bit later.
And I think some of the discussion that, you know, David, that you're saying that you reach out and have lots of questions, I think as a board, we need to have those discussions at the table, not I send my questions and Jim says his questions and Dave says his questions, because you may understand something that I don't understand, or I may have a question that someone else doesn't understand. So I think it's great that, you know, I've met with Mike a million times, or, you know, I've reached out to you guys with questions, but we haven't done it at the table at that level, really, because we've always been, you know, moving it forward, or we just haven't had that depth of discussion that I think is needed at the table rather than the one-off conversations.
So what you're seeing discussed tonight is the fact that we have a lot of new faces, you know, participating in this process. You're the newest member. Jim is probably the only one who's been here the longest to deal with this. Doc is still relatively new, and Dave has been here for a while too. But everybody has a different perspective on how they want to do it. The charter and the bylaws lay out the process. Frank and I have disagreed, but we've also agreed on how we're going to get things done, because we want to try and make it as smooth as possible for everybody, regardless of what the expectation might be. So we had a long deliberation about this past year, and I think we got to the point where we got to a discussion, an agreement as to how we were going to proceed. We did that this year, and granted, it was a new approach from what we've been doing in the past, apparently, because this was new to the way I've done it since I've been here.
Perhaps if I could, I'm sorry.
Roger, excuse me, Roger.
I'd like to ask Frank a question.
Can you come up though, so people can hear you, Roger?
He was sitting right there. Okay.
I find myself representing two different entities here, if Frank is correct. I represent the Board of Selectmen, and I represent the Water and Sewer Commissioners. So the Water and Sewer Commission has presented a budget to the town manager, as we always have, and that budget becomes a part of what goes on the town meeting floor under Article 4. It is the position of the Water and Sewer Commissioners that their budget is what they are asking for to meet the level of service that has been the decision of the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen says we want to maintain level services in the town. We have to present a budget that not only maintains level services, but takes care of problems that we've known about for years that we're trying to fix. And that's the budget that we presented. Is it the Water and Sewer Commissioners' duty to question the AdCom on the floor of town meeting about the cut that was made in water and sewer?
Anyone, including the Water and Sewer Commissioners, can hold that line item
Yes.
with regard to the cut, and can make a motion to increase it to the requested amount that's in the warrant, so yes.
So you can ask for an increase in a,
From the recommended amount from the advisory committee up to the requested amount.
but
that's
that
in
would
the
be
warrant.
up to the Water and Sewer Commissioners to do that.
If they want to do it.
If they want to do it,
anyone
and a
come-
citizen of the town. to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I would recommend that those.
Just want to make sure, this board wouldn't be in a position to act on anything that would ask for an increase. It would be up to the Water and Sewer Commission.
With respect to the water and sewer
This is what we're
budget,
doing.
That's what we're
with the
doing.
water and sewer budget.
And I feel like these are gonna be held either way, like a lot of them, maybe we can take our stance on certain ones, but I don't know, besides the one or two that we're talking about, that it's really gonna make things move faster. I feel like in the
They are
end,
gonna-
most of these will get held
Yeah.
by someone.
Well, the reason I spoke with Bill was if it would go smoother, because then we can have those motions prepared.
Gotcha, okay,
Right.
thank you
You
for
know, which we
clarifying
can
that.
This is
hold
what
it.
I've given you
can-
tonight.
You
Thank
can hold it, you can come up, you know, I move to,
Mhm.
you know, increase the recommended amount.
That
from advisory committee
clarifies it for me
this.
having the motion ready.
And then you can take your position as why you want to increase it, because it's your budget. Not if you want anyone else to do it. But I would think town meeting, you know, would be scratching their head a little bit if you didn't stand up to defend one of your budgets, you know, as to why you think that you should have that increase. So, you know, I was looking at how to have town meeting Article 4 run as smoothly as possible. And, you know, Bill was in agreement with that. I've talked with the chairman of the advisory committee, and as to how it's gonna go as smoothly as possible with items that are held. Because what happens is, when something's held, you do all the unheld votes, like you did earlier. And then the first line item that was held, the advisory committee comes in and says, we move to approve this line item for this amount from this source. And does their explanation. Then it's open up to town meeting members. So typically whoever holds it comes up, asks questions, but in this case, you'd want to come up and make a motion to increase it from the advisory committee's member to the amount you want. And that way, it goes smoother. We have the written motion that goes right in the record. Mr. Cutler holds it, you know, in the file for our records, just so that town meeting can go as smooth as possible.
Right.
But if none of you want to hold it and just let things go as they will, you know, that's your prerogative too. But I do want to get, you know, Stephanie came up here. I don't think transparency is the right word to use the advisory committee. They're holding their meetings, they're going through the budgets, and they're voting them. Now, I think they should have done a courtesy that they think that there could have been some reductions. But I don't think transparency, lack of transparency is the correct word to use at all. I think they're transparent. The meetings are open to the public and can come. They typically allow people to speak. So I take exception to that, even though, you know, I've only been to a few of the meetings this year. I think the advisory committee on a whole is very transparent. Now, with regard to this coming at the end, the advisory committee typically doesn't make their votes until they've heard all the budgets at once and had a real determination of what the revenue looks like and have a discussion as to, you know, how they feel. One of the issues that I got calls on from the advisory committee is they wanted to put more money into stabilization. I had to explain to them that because there's an amount in the warrant article, you can't increase it. There's a bylaw that says you can't increase a warrant article above the amount that's written in the article. That's why you see a lot of capital projects. When the warrant comes out, there's not an amount in there.
Correct.
You know, because if you put an amount in there, and then later on, the bids came in higher, you can't increase it above that. And that's happened many years ago, but it happened
Exactly
one
right.
time. So you typically don't put an amount in there.
Point of order. Could you use the microphone?
It's in front of me, I'm
The
sorry.
microphones,
He fades off.
Joni, maybe you could move up to the front.
Yeah, maybe move up a little closer, Joni. Just a-
Those microphones are
Yeah.
over here.
for cable, they're not for here.
Well, can he
Well, they-
speak up? That's,
They do have.
Yeah, but he's facing us.
I can hear him,
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
speak beautifully, but Frank, we need you to speak up a little bit, please.
So not to belabor the discussion any longer, but I do want to make one other point. If you do have in the upcoming next year's budget an early meeting, then the Water and Sewer Commissioner should also be at the meeting, as would be the school committee and the selectmen.
Yeah, because they're an elected board, a body.
And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, in moving forward, I don't know if you want to stay as we do this?
I'll be staying, I'll be,
You'll be in back, so
I don't know
we
if
can
you
use you
need
as a,
what's that?
we can use you as a reference if we need to.
Would you like me to stay
Resource?
here?
No,
I'd be
no,
more
that's
than happy
fine.
to.
So I guess, with the rest of the board members, do we want to go through each of these amendments then? At least just to discuss what the discrepancy is, and if we as a board want to put it on hold?
Could I just talk a little bit about Article 4 in general? Because this discussion, and if the process changed, and I remember the meeting that you guys had at Town Hall, which was just the chairman, there wasn't a full discussion back to this board that says best and final on day one over to AdCom, and then we'd go along with other stuff. So in my mind, we haven't had this discussion on Article 4, other than sending it over, because it is different than what we've done in the past. So I spent a lot of time looking at the differences between AdCom's recommendation and ours on our $79 million budget. I called AdCom, and it shouldn't, I'm going to vote against Article 4, and it shouldn't be a big surprise. At least there's one thing I'm a little consistent. I voted against our articles in the past. I voted against our contracts in the past. I think it's too rich in a lot of ways. But when I sat with members of the AdCom and they explained to me why they voted on some of the issues, on some of the items, and when things came up, for instance, the budget, and then it changed because we got $300,000 back, and it went back into a lot of the line items here in March and April. So I'll go through it very quickly, but administration, there was, again, concern about the 4% increases, and you can argue if it is or not, but that's what they're hearing as taxpayers and people that have been working on this. Some of the contracts, they think are too high on people coming in at new positions. On the financial, there was concern about the water changes and having an increase of money in the finance department to the tune of $52,000. Going on to the police, the fourth police cruiser when 3 was in the original. And there was a lot of discussion on overtime time versus new full-time people. There was a lot of discussion on the new deputy fire chief. There's $117,000 discrepancy there. The joint public safety on some of the capital outlay, when that came into the process and what that's going towards. Capital outlay on public works, snow and ice to $7,500 and $11,000. The water enterprise, that whole process of hiring staff, increasing the amount in finance to supplement, to secure that new process. And there was $45,000 that they talked about related to that. And it goes on and on. So there's a lot of stuff that is discussed there, and I think it's well thought out. 3 years ago, I had said the same thing, similar numbers, and I voted against the budget there. I kind of had a come to Jesus meeting when I went to the senior center the other night, and I spoke to the seniors on one topic, and what I heard from them was, when is it going to stop? And I'm not trying to get on a platform here, but the answer that was given back to justify the increases is, we've got this amount and we're spending this amount, so it's okay. And it's oversimplifying it, because I know there's thoughts that goes into the budget, but if you get this amount, are you going to spend this amount? And if we get this amount, are we going to spend this amount? The level service, budget discussion, we're not level service. People keep saying we're level service. We're hiring new people. We're hiring new positions. We are not the same level of service 1 year or 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, whenever this level of service safeguard was put in there that people talk about. We are not level service. People are expecting more. They're getting more. We're hiring new, bringing things in. And in all due respect, we are making savings and we're implementing stuff. But to say to the seniors who are saying, we're not getting any increases, you're getting 4, or maybe it's 3, or maybe it's 2, they're getting none. They can't afford to stay. It's a population that is silent, and we've had joint meetings, we've had summits where department heads come and make presentations, and it's not attended. We had a Saturday meeting, we invited the whole town. People don't come. Seniors are certainly not going to come to a town when they're 70 and 80 years old, but it's clearly they're getting priced out. So unless our response is something different than, well, our income is here so we can spend there, I want to see it come down. And I've said it in the past, and I voted against budget. I don't know what it's going to take to do that, but I feel strongly that I can't support this budget. And it's not the last minute, and it's not jumping on a bandwagon because the AdCom is. I haven't had a serious discussion at this board in years. And Dave's absolutely correct. We are spending, and you've said it at other meetings, we're spending well we're taking the money that was at that 1.25 years ago, and we're putting it towards, instead of an override, we're paying off, so we're doing the right stuff. When we asked for the 1.25, this entire board, some of you were new on it, but voted for it. Voted for instead of going up 2.5, it was 1.25, there was a 500,000, we were gonna split it, and it was a process. And then presentations were made, and that was off the table. The following year, we got $1 million extra into the budget, and there was zero time to discuss that. It just wasn't presented. The money comes in and it gets spent, and the money from all the different sources are increasing. And I don't think it would, rather than taking the adversarial approach and saying they had no right to do this, they didn't talk to us about it, now we're gonna make amendments to exactly what we had before, with the exception of a finance department, I think we can do better. I think we can look at this and say, well, maybe they have a point. Maybe that 4th police cruiser that wasn't in the original budget can wait till next year. But we haven't done it. So I'm
But
voting
it
against it.
actually was in the original request. It was. So what I did
It
was
was in
I
the original
actually.
crest, but then it was taken out to
It was
balance
taken
the
out
budget.
to balance the budget,
To
that's
balance the
correct.
budget.
So then, but then, when the revenue came in, that could actually reinstate that, I was able to do that.
But I look at it, and I understand, I read the article that was in the paper, the money came in and it went back into, 56,000 for the 4th police cruiser, 44 for the Boyden Library, 17 for joint public. Rather than saying, well, we got a savings in the insurance by 300, we got the budget to this point, it's balanced, we're moving it forward, we took that money and put it right back into the budget. We don't have to do that. The sky wasn't gonna fall if we took that money and said, that's great, give a little break, or put it in savings for next year.
So here's the challenge that I face. I asked this board, back in January, I gave you 3 options. Do you want to do level funding, level services, or level services with enhancements? And you unanimously voted for level services with enhancements. That's exactly what I gave you. So, and to say that we had $1 million in extra in the money, in the budget, we set that money aside to pay for the new borough school. We didn't put it back into the budget. We took it out. We put it back into, we set it aside and gave it so that we could actually not raise the taxes by 2.5% more for debt exclusion.
So I hear what you're saying, but a few minutes ago, we had a veteran department head come up here and say, we've been directed for level service. That's what he just said. So if we're talking about level, whatever term we just used,
Level services with enhancements.
and we got
whenever
department heads
possible.
saying level service,
Well, I think that's what he meant. I mean, I don't think there's any argument over that, correct? Level services with enhancements. There was no question about that.
The one thing that can't be controlled, Jim, is the volume of increases in personnel, and I'm talking about citizenship. How many more water services do we have this year than we had last year? How many more sewer services do we have this year than we had last year? And every year it's going up. Every year the amount of materials and things we need to buy, the price goes up. And sometimes it goes up way faster than the COLA. So, that's chemicals.
every town is the same, every city is the same. The costs are going up. But when we've got an almost $80 million budget, and there's no give and take at this level, granted it was when the departments came up and asked for things, there was that level of saying no, and we got to this point. But when the AdCom comes up, and I think there's valid points in here that we can't consider because the budget's,
I can only represent the budgets that I control. And if you look at my budgets over the years, it's a very small piece of the pie. DPW is a very small piece of the big pie in the town of Foxborough. It's less than fire, less than police, and less than schools. So, but we have broad increases in responsibilities that are imposed on us, not by the townspeople, by the growth in Foxborough and by the controlling agencies. We work for the DEP with water and sewer. They control us. We don't control.
no, I'm not arguing, you're doing a fantastic job, and you're doing exactly what a department head should be doing. You're looking at serving or in every department head in the schools the same.
To try to balance it, we look out ahead. We look at least 3 years ahead. So whatever we ask for is already funded in our budget, in water and sewer. I can't, DPW, the highway stuff, we probably don't increase that at all, you know.
Very low.
So I understand, there are fixed costs, there are certain costs that you mandated, there are salaries, and they're subjective. There are other costs that are subjective. You answer to your responsibilities as a department.
Exactly.
I've got to answer, and selectmen have to answer to the big picture of the taxes, in the tax increases, and saying, where can we cut?
You can come back and say to us at the beginning of the year, if you want to answer that way, you can say, look, we're not gonna keep increasing the revenue, so you're gonna have to cut back on services somewhere.
Okay, so we're probably saying the same thing to a degree. I have been saying it, and I am coming back on one voice. So what I'm saying is, I think the overall cost in growth and expenses in this town is raising higher than I have seen. Take a 9-10 year period. I think we can do better. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's important to add perspective, though, Jim. And I understand everything you said, but put it in perspective. I think David hit it earlier tonight when he said, I compare where we are in comparison to other communities of similar size budget, operations, et cetera. And where do we stand, Dave? Right in the middle.
In the middle.
Right in the middle. So are we out of line? The answer's no.
I agree in some areas. I disagree in others. I look at our administration salaries. There's no way that's in the middle in some of these. I look at different pieces. I looked at the time recently when we're looking out to hire people, and we're looking at towns that blew my mind that we're comparing ourselves.
We haven't used those, Jim. We talked about that conversation, and we changed our process.
Because there's a pushback, and what I'm doing now is pushing. I'm not going to get into individual salaries, but we've got top administration that if this is and we're shooting for this, it's up here. And it's coming to the point, and I think it resonated with the AdCom, it certainly resonated with the seniors, and it resonated with the people that I see every day saying, we're a small town, and we're paying a lot of money, and the taxes are going up. That's all I'm saying. Can we do better?
So
I
let's keep that in perspective again, right? So the difference between I don't know what that number is, by the way, what we should be paying for administration, because nobody tells me what it is. But I can tell you that I've yet to hear anybody say to me, we want less services.
But, so are
Nobody
you
says
saying
that.
that we're not telling you administrative salaries?
So administrative salaries, so with respect to the administrative salaries, I will tell you, what's the difference? Maybe 10, 15, 20 grand at the most, right? Because I know what the salary market is right now for administration, I can tell you that. It's not that different. I can tell you that we're not that far off. So the difference is, yes, you're dealing with a person who's got 36 years' experience doing this. That counts for something. You also have an administration that's well-versed in how we've done it and has built an organization that needed to be built to professional level, which has been done. So I would measure this organization against anybody right now, because we do it right.
And I
It's
think
professional.
I think just taking what you just said, administration salaries in the first one here, I think, you talked about earlier about lack of transparency. I think that one what I'm going to say is going to be difficult and it's going to be direct, but I'm going to say it. Yeah. I think that one may have come under the light this year because, an assistant town manager was hired. We lost one of the most qualified, assistant town managers. It was kind of dropped on people. I don't know if it was posted. I don't know kind of what happened. I don't know what salaries are. And at the same time, we're paying another assistant town manager for 6 months to bring you up to speed, to bring the new assistant town manager up to speed. So this whole time, we think someone's retiring, and then, boom, in the paper the next day, they're at another town. So I think that particular line item.
But just a very part-time basis.
But I think, just know that I think
issue.
that particular line item, just taking one out of what's here, being more transparent and having those discussions at the table and knowing, that someone's being hired and here's where they're coming in and here's what I'm thinking and this person's shadowing, but, because why couldn't our old assistant town manager just stayed here on a part-time basis for 30 hours a week?
Well, because didn't work for her schedule. That's
So just know that.
She's working a couple days a week in another town. So let me just address that for you. First of all, with respect to that happening, I promoted a person who's dedicated his life to actually learning this business and to becoming an administrator or a manager someday. When you have that opportunity in this world, that is an extraordinary opportunity. Because if you take a look at people in the industry today, they say, we encourage you to do that because the market is so thin.
So does Foxborough pay top dollar for someone who doesn't have the experience?
We didn't pay top dollar.
So I don't know. Again, what I'm saying, I'm not saying that I know it for fact. I'm talking about perceptions as I go out and talk to people and through town. So I think that because of the way things went down, I think that there's a spotlight on this particular line item this year. So, that's my feedback.
Yeah,
I don't know which way I'm going to go on this.
And I'm happy to justify that, and as long as I have to. Because the end of the day, we have a person who is not only knowledgeable about the community, but knowledgeable about the business in general. Does he have the same level of expertise as the former assistant town manager? The answer is no, but I didn't pay him at the same level either. So I think that's important for people to know that. And I think that, and I'm sorry this is uncomfortable for you, but I'm also telling the truth.
I'm a big boy, I can handle it.
Yeah, but I'm also telling the truth. So I think what's important is that perception unfortunately becomes reality with some people, but the reality is that I did everything by the book. I presented everything to you. I did not hide this. I presented it to you and I said, this was my intention. Nobody said, don't do it. Nobody said that. They said,
Bill, in all honesty, you gave it to us at town manager's update where there's not a line, it wasn't a line item, it wasn't under our control.
So if at that point you had a concern, you could have said, you know what, can we hold off on that? Because you've done it many times. And I think that's the thing that I'm reacting to, is the fact that, you know what, I've done what I could to present you the best situation possible, but yet it's like coming out of the kind of actually anywhere in the world right now that I've never even heard of. So I'm just really surprised by it. So that's really where I'm coming from. I'm disappointed that this has come to that kind of a discussion, because quite honestly, this discussion never took place at the AdCom. It never took.
It did.
It did. I will challenge you, Jim. It did not. What I've heard was what I heard about, generally speaking, salaries, and we've explained that we changed our pattern. This board sat there and changed our pay grid to bring it more in line with what the rest of the towns in the area were paying.
I understand that. You did present it, and they unanimously cut it out of for the recommendation. So you can say you presented it, but they didn't support it.
What do you mean? Who?
I don't think the AdCom supported. I think if you look at the cut in that item, it's directly related to what we're just talking about.
No, I don't know what the actual cut was for, but I've been told.
That's what I'm telling you, is that this is the perception.
All right, so here's the cut, by the way, is for a person's salary that's working in the job now.
But had this gone down differently, had there been a posted job, had there been a discussion that, this person is being, brought up, and this is where I'm thinking, and this is what I'm doing, and Mary Beth is cutting back and going to another job, but instead, just know that, I'm going to use the term kind of blindsided, at least for me, I can't speak for other people, that Mary Beth's retiring, here's who's filling in, she's going to work part-time, we're going to pay 2 people for 6 months, and then I, on the last day, have fun with your grandkids and retirement, and then to the next day see a newspaper article that someone has a new job. It's just tough to swallow, and I think that we could have done a better job communicating. I understand what your intentions were, but I think we could have done a better job communicating it so that we're not here today, so that people are feeling like, is this line item too much? Was there a missed opportunity, to discuss it? So now, because there was a missed opportunity, here we are.
This happened 8 months ago? 8 months ago? But go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to stand up here or at town meeting to defend my own salary. Right. I just want to correct one thing, and that is that 2 salaries weren't being paid for that position.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know, because there's been no discussion.
But there wouldn't normally be, Leah, because it's an operational matter.
You can take a look in the town report. It's posted all over town. But I was working 1.5 jobs, and Mary Beth was working half a job. So there weren't 2 salaries being paid for that position.
She was not taking a full salary.
I just wanted to make that one correction. I'm not going to defend my salary here or at town meeting. That's up to the taxpayers to decide.
Right. But that's the reality, is that she was not being paid a full salary. She worked for the hours that she worked, she got paid for the hours that she worked. And she also, so she reduced that so that he could have the ability to earn some additional money while he was learning the job as well.
But he didn't
in that
earn
role.
additional money.
He did earn some additional, but not the full salary.
So
Not the full
we're
salary. It was- it
slicing
was a-
hairs here, but he did not, he
No,
made
it
more
was a-
money.
It was a stipend to learn a higher level job, absolutely.
So I think that that could have been presented to us, period.
Okay, but,
Just to understand.
but it's an operational matter, Leah. I mean, this is the way, the organization, the way the government is structured, is that I wouldn't normally report that kind of situation to the board on a daily basis.
Well, if we're
It's
grooming, if
operational.
we're grooming someone to be our next town manager, my opinion is I would think that we would get that type of courtesy to kind of know what's going on with that particular position.
If I had known
Just
that
given
that
that.
was an issue, I should have known about it 8 months ago. Not now. That's the thing I'm reacting to. Nobody said anything about this 8 months ago, but now it's an issue. And it's, you know what's an issue? It's because another committee just randomly cut that number without any discussion with us or with the administration about it.
Bill,
That's the thing that's most challenging.
having been on the AdCom, I don't think the AdCom randomly cuts anything. The departments were in there, the
It was
presentation
not
was in there.
discussed with us, Jim. It was not
They made
discussed
their
with us.
presentation of the budget, and they disagreed. It's not random.
But it was
It's
random in
not
terms of the cut
random.
that was to our budget, because it was not done with any clear indication to us how that was done.
Did you ask her where?
Yes, I asked her, and I was not even put on the agenda to discuss it. That's what I did. That's a discourtesy I was received on that.
Chief?
Can I stray outside my lane and ask the board to discuss those 12 items and take a position on them? This is like FY20 Bizarro World. I've been at 15 meetings in January, and I've got people telling me we haven't had a discussion about the budgets, or we haven't had a serious discussion.
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? I
Right.
can tell you that the department heads came to you wanting to have a serious discussion and presented our budgets.
You know,
And didn't get any questions, didn't get any feedback, and I'll tell you, from my perspective, presumed that the town manager and the selectmen had recommended the numbers that appear in the book. If that's not the case, we've been at another meeting for 2 hours tonight, listening to this bizarre world discussion about Bill didn't make any cuts. Bill cut $60,000 out of my recommended budget, which I'm not happy about. But he made a cut before it got to you and before it got to the AdCom.
You know,
So we're here again tonight. the
And I
third or
discussed it
fourth
with him
meeting
when I did it.
wanting to have a discussion about these line items and ask you to take a position on them. I respectfully ask that we do that finally.
You know, and I appreciate that, Chief. And coming back full circle to all the discussions we had back in January, you guys did come in front of us, and you did explain to us why it was important to have the 3 new police officers versus people in front, dispatch people. I understood it. I thought we all understood it. Same with Chief Kelleher when he came in front of us, certainly Roger when he came in front of us. So the discussions were, I mean, from my point of view, when we, and I say we should have accepted the budget, but we moved the budget along, in my mind, and I don't want to put words in anybody else's, it was because we agreed with it. But we agreed with it after everybody came in front of us and made their pitch. I agree. I think we have to focus back onto these 12 line items. I think we should either approve them, not approve them, and then let the citizens decide. Because ultimately, that's where, you know, we can discuss what happened, and I think, you know, there's discussion whether, advisory committee did a certain action in spite of some other reason. They did what they did as an autonomous group, and they have a real important job in our community, what they do. But our job now,
no quarrel with
with
that.
being 2 weeks away from town meeting, is to finish this and let the townspeople decide.
So should we move to the first, do we want to move to the first one?
I think we should
Vote on Article 4. in its
vote on
entirety.
Article 4 to approve it, and then go through the amendments and decide if we're going to amend it.
So move to recommend Article 4.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think we've had some.
I had to say it. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Well, are we going to go through and discuss these? So we're not going to go through and
Well,
discuss?
the approval is to approve the warrant article to go forward.
I think we're
No.
under discussion now, we're moving,
No, because the amendments, Frank explained, the amendments are separate. Correct? If we decide to put it on hold,
My recommendation to you, Mr. Chairman, is to vote all the line items except the 12. You may be all in agreement on all the line items, and then go through the other 12 line items one by one, to see where the board stands on each one of them. Just like you do at town meeting.
okay.
So assume those 12 are held, vote all the other ones, and go on the assumption that one's gonna be comfortable with those other ones.
So I will recommend to you, along what Frank is suggesting, that all the articles are approved with the exception of 123, 130, 192, 210, 220,
Hold on, 192, yep.
210, 220, 235, 410, and 423. And on the final 450, no, 450 is actually water. I'm not sure that they should even take that up. Because it's in the budget, but it's a water and sewer budget.
They can take a position on it, but the line sewer commissioners can take their own position.
That's fair, that's fair. Okay, so I'll leave 450 on there for discussion. And then on the, and then 610 and 915.
915?
915,
950.
group health insurance.
915.
Oh,
I have
915 or 950?
There is no
It's
950.
915.
915.
No,
So move to recommend Article 4.
915.
915.
915.
Move to recommend Article 4 with the exception of the items just referenced. The line items referenced.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
1 second, I just want to make sure that. That's fine.
Okay.
All right.
So now can I go to the first one, and then we'll discuss each one individually? So
So we've
Which
already
one?
sort of discussed the administrative salaries.
I think I still need to make a motion, though, and then,
Well, do we make a motion, or are we just discussing?
Make a motion to, you've already discussed it, but if you want to discuss it further, you got to put a motion on the table for discussion.
so move to increase administration salaries budget by $26,500 from $481,291 to $507,791.
Second.
Okay, for discussion.
Open, any further discussion?
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right. So we will get up and make.
And hold-
and hold it.
hold
And then make
123.
the amendment
Correct,
on, this is 123.
correct.
Okay. All right, next one is 130, I believe.
Yes. And so with respect to 130, I just need to make a recommendation to you that I agree with the recommendation of the advisory committee on their reduced amount.
So if I can just ask that I make the motion, though, for each of these, just to keep it running
I
smoother?
apologize, I
And then we'll
apologize.
have the discussion, and then we'll vote. So
Correct.
move to lower the municipal building salaries budget by $213 from $98,426 to $98,213.
I think you're on 130, Leah. It was next in line? Budget line
Yeah,
for
I had
130?
that as next in line, too. Was that not 130?
130? Yeah, it's 130, Leah.
There's not a motion to amend. You're
This-
just
Yeah,
looking
I'm
at the
going with the
motion.
motions that are,
She's going right down this.
Oh. Okay, fair enough, yeah, because
so do I
we're
not
actually
have
actually in
one for that?
agreement with 130.
So I don't have, so I
Yeah,
don't.
So there's no reason to.
So we don't need to hold that one. So
No,
move,
we don't need
so
to hold it.
move, move
I
to
held it because
recommend.
just for discussion purposes, to let you know.
So move to
Yeah.
recommend 130 as is.
Yes.
Second.
Any further discussion?
As is, because you've already changed it?
He agrees with it.
I agree with it. I agree with that, and I would recommend it to you as well.
Okay.
I think I reduced, that it's a reduction of about $52,000, I believe.
The only thing for consideration is, I understand we don't need it in 2021, but it seems that we will need this, if things happen, in 2021 and in perpetuity as long as we have monthly billing.
If that comes up, if that comes to fruition, then that would be a consideration in the FY '21 budget.
Okay.
But yeah, that's true, absolutely true. We have talked about that.
But just making sure I understand that
Possibility.
this could very well come up next year.
It's
so,
possible,
okay.
we are still exploring some options for that.
software will solve that problem.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
We
right,
might be able
so
to address that. So I
Made the
stand
motion.
corrected, I'm sorry.
had discussion.
Yeah. We had discussion, so all those in favor?
Okay. So 192.
Let me just make sure I'm following. So next municipal building, sorry, so here, I'm back to this one. So move to lower the municipal building salaries budget by $213 from 98,426 to 98,213.
192?
192, Joan?
192.
192, they had the same numbers. Salaries at 98,
The original selectman's different, so I think that's where the difference is.
Yeah. Right, your original recommendation was, what was believed to be your original recommendation was 98,426.
Yeah.
The new amount is 98,213, and I agree with that as well.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right, so the next one, moving to 210, move to increase the police salaries budget by $50,538 from $4,054,953 to $4,105,191.
Second.
All right, for further discussion. If I could real quick, Chief, can you bring up that point again, that you had already decreased overtime?
Sure. So the reason that the overtime was proposed to be increased was two reasons. One is we've historically underfunded this line item, as we've discussed at many prior meetings, by the way. And so we've gone from a high of about $587,000 a year in overtime. I've reduced that over the last 3 years to a projected number of about $440,000. So we're dealing not only with the historical underfunding of that line item, but also with a need that we can't quantify associated with the new model, the SEMREC model that will be coming. So we asked for an increase in the overtime and the 3 new police positions. I remind everybody that the 3 new police positions are actually a net reduction in personnel from 8 to 3, so it's a reduction. But also remind everybody that the finance director, former finance director, who's been analyzing SEMREC since 2014 when this idea was first conceived, projected a savings from this model of roughly $517,000 a year over 3 years. And nobody on the administration said, there's 517, let's spend up to it. We are asking for the 3 police positions and an increase in overtime, all of which is more than paid for by the transition from our current dispatch model to a new one. And so I proposed a roughly $110,000 increase in the overtime line item. Bill cut 60, AdCom cut 50, putting us back to a level funded overtime budget, which we know is historically underfunded by more than $100,000. And therefore, I'd respectfully request that at a minimum, it gets supported at what we thought was the town manager and selectmen's level, which is $60,000 less than we asked for, but $50,000 more than what AdCom has recommended.
And Chief, within that budget, there's a capital outlay. Is that includes the additional cruiser that was not in there at the beginning?
No, it wasn't a big.
It wasn't in the budget when it came to us.
Well, it was in my budget, and the reason it was in my budget
I
is
reduced
that we again are trying to play catch-up to keep the fleet in appropriate condition for safety and comfort of the officers who use it as an office 8 hours a day, but also to reduce the maintenance costs associated with the aging vehicles with more than 100,000 miles. So the 4 vehicle request this year was to play catch-up, which will allow us, we hope, to get into a more consistent routine of asking for cruisers on an annual basis. But again, Bill cut it.
To make it all fit, but I think what's important, this is a really an issue for what the new process actually yielded, was the fact that I had to make a budget. I wanted to present you a balanced budget. We probably would have not made that cut until later on in the process, based on the previous process that we used. So this would happen. This is a result of the new process. So as a result of coming back and looking at getting those numbers late in the game, we didn't get the actual health insurance numbers till March 28th, I think it was.
Correct.
So for us to even make that number, we didn't know that was available to us until late in the process. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is to present to you that I want to be fair about, because I heard the need, I respected the need, but I told him, at this point, I can't afford it. But I went back and looked at it, and I said, now I can afford it. So I went back to him and told him I would fund it, as I did with the fire department as well.
And just for my own clarification, outside of those items, which I understand, there were additional items that were cut, some of them were
Yes.
funded through this, and some of them were not and stayed on?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly
thank you.
right, exactly right.
So you felt these particular outlay ones to be the most
Yes.
important? Okay.
These are the ones that, I mean, you'll see, there's a couple of them that we really should be doing because it could affect us in other ways. So, that's it.
So there's two different amendments with this.
Yeah, I'll read the
Um,
second one in a
so-
second.
So on any other discussion on the first one, increase the salaries? All right, all those in favor? Opposed, none. So now the second one.
All right, so move to increase the police capital outlay budget by $56,720 from $170,160 to $226,880.
Second.
All right. We discussed it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? 3-1.
All right, moving along to fire, 220. Move to increase fire salaries budget by $116,468 from $3,377,779 to $3,494,247.
Second.
Further discussion. And I guess as we did with Chief Baker, Mike, do you want to, Chief Mike, do you want to?
Yeah, the proposed cuts to that salary present some serious problems for the operation of my department in, trying to plan for the future. One of the issues is, I think there was a perception that there was an unfilled position and that was low-hanging fruit. So when I took over as chief, concurrently, a gentleman left for military service. He's gone deployed with the U.S. Coast Guard. I immediately hired a firefighter to fill that position to try to keep the overtime costs down. And then I waited to make the promotion up the chain to the position that I had vacated as deputy chief. So I was waiting to see, I didn't want to come back to the board or Bill in my first year as chief for more money. So I was trying to play fiscally conservative. Without this position, it causes two issues. Number one, it causes me to have the potential to lay this gentleman off when the guy gets back from the Coast Guard. The other issue is that 2 years ago, we accepted the federal SAFER grant, and we have about $480,000 left in that grant that's paying for firefighter salaries right now. So we submitted our roster and an organizational chart of all our operational positions, and that went to the federal government, and we agreed that we wouldn't, either through attrition or layoff, reduce that number in order to stay eligible for this funding that's there. So that's the issue that I have.
So part of that process of getting that grant was having
Maintaining the organization as it was.
Was the maintaining the organization?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the issue. So we had to submit, and then we agreed that we would, either through attrition or layoff, reduce that number. Puts us at risk of losing about $500,000.
So the EMS coordinator that's being,
So this is the other part of the complication, is that from what I understand from my liaison, that the AdCom really liked that position, as I thought your board did. It was a no cost or savings because we were taking money from the health department. It was a collaboration between two departments being paid for by insurance premiums and the money for the public health nurse contract. So, as a department head, it kind of puts me in a quagmire because, do we, you're asking me now to take on the responsibility and liability of the health department, epidemiology, and, other public health functions with 25% less staff. So that, am I gonna take on that liability and that additional responsibility and work with less staff?
so from an operational standpoint, you're better off not taking on the EMS
Absolutely.
coordinator and putting back the deputy chief.
Right, but even that, in good conscience,
But it doesn't help the community.
no, it doesn't help the community, and the public health department is short $35,000, so, we'd have to figure that out too. That's obviously a different issue, but that's the compounding issue down the chain. So, yeah, I would try to salvage the deputy chief of operations position. I brought org charts if you guys want to see exactly what these people do, and we can have a further discussion. But that's the long and short of it, is that operationally it causes some serious issues, and it's 2 months away. July 1st is 2 months away. I don't have a lot of time to plan for these operational impacts, especially with some of the stuff going on at the stadium. There's 2 of us doing, the job of what used to be 3 people sharing those responsibilities, so.
Any further discussion? Nope. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed, none?
All right, and then similar to that on the capital outlay piece, just like we did with police, so move to increase the fire capital outlay budget by $44,000 from 0 to $44,000.
Just, I guess, under discussion, since you're here, what's the capital outlay?
So the capital.
Hold on a second, I
Oh, I'm
didn't hear a
sorry,
second.
Second?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
The capital, the big item that we always use in capital for the last probably 5 or 8 years is our personal protective equipment. So that's turnout gear, boots, hoods, gloves, things like that. We keep rotating that, so there's an end of life. So we just keep, so we don't have to come and drop a $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 capital item. We get kind of $12,000 a year to replace some of that stock. That's a bulk of it. Some of the other stuff is just ancillary tools, portable lighting. We're gonna try to replace 2, one of the requests was replacing, we use 2 paramedic bicycles. We use them at the stadium, we use them for the town. So like we have Foxborough Cup coming up, we'll send 2 paramedics down on bikes to patrol the fields and provide emergency medical service. That was one of the things, some deteriorating firefighting hose. So that would open the project.
Thank you.
And like police, were those in your budget initially and then cut when the reductions, and now you're looking to just have it back, kind of like what Chief Baker just said?
Yeah, everything was covered.
Okay.
We didn't even get 3 crews.
Okay. So you had asked for all these items initially, and now, okay, you're just getting back to where you were.
Yeah, same thing.
Any further questions? We good? All those in favor?
All right, moving on to joint public safety, 235. Move to increase the joint public safety building capital outlay budget by $17,000 from $24,400 to $44,400.
So this is just so everybody understands what this is for. This is a case where we are actually trying to maintain the building. It's been over 10 years since that building has been upgraded to some things. The carpeting is wearing out in some of the areas, and painting needs to be done, particularly in the training room and in other areas in hallways and corridors. So we try to set aside $17,000 for improvements to the building, which were recommended.
Yeah, there's some furniture that's broken.
Furniture broken furniture, things. So this is just in furniture, carpet, and paint for the building that were recommended to us by facilities.
Okay. Any further questions? All those in favor?
All right, next, sorry, I just want to make sure I give everyone the number, if you're following, 410. So move to increase the Public Works capital outlay budget by $7,500 from 0 to $7,500.
So, do you want to just talk about that, Raj?
That was an item on capital outlay that, I'm trying to remember which one it was.
The mechanic lift?
Lift.
Yeah,
Mechanic lift.
the lift for the garage, where we maintain all the cruisers, all of our equipment, and all other town vehicles except fire equipment. And the other thing is, we're looking for next year to maybe do a joint venture with the fire department to take over that maintenance of the fire equipment, because they're losing one of their guys in June, and the second guy doesn't have a couple of years left, as I understand.
Right, so we're looking to redefine that operation.
So that's a new lift, not a replacement of an existing or maintenance of an existing.
A new one, yeah.
So we're obviously thinking ahead, a new lift that would be able to lift a fire truck.
No, the fire truck lift is at the fire station
Yeah.
will remain.
Yeah, and it'll stay there.
And can the cruisers and stuff go on the fire truck lift, or does it only take big, so we have a lift in town?
We do.
Okay.
So we have 2 mechanics that are of, in the next couple of years, are gonna be retired.
But we're just looking for the lift, not the mechanics.
And quite honestly, a lot of departments are getting away from having firefighters do that work. They want the ASC certified mechanics doing that work for obvious reasons.
Nowadays have to have licenses for everything.
And do you have folks that have that license?
All of our guys.
All the guys that do.
Any other further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? So we have a first tie. So that means for us that does not pass now. There might be a time later on where the board might meet before town meeting, when all 5 of us are there, and we'll retake this up again there.
All right, so moving on, let me know if I'm going too fast, but I'm just trying to chug along. So
For anybody,
423 is the next one, move to increase snow and ice capital outlay from by $11,000, sorry, from $0 to $11,000.
Every year we replace one plow. This was taken out. I don't think it's a good idea to take it out because we had a mild winter, but every year we have to replace at least one. Sometimes we have to replace 2.
This is something which is, I think is really important for you to all know. That if we don't spend the same amount of money in this line, we can't overspend the line when it comes to actual storms next year. There's a statutory provision that limits that. So that's why you can't just reduce that amount. It would actually have a significant impact operationally if we do that. So you have to pay up to the same amount of money that you had this previous year.
So why did you eliminate it last time?
So I did not know that until after the fact.
Okay.
I found out about it afterwards.
Is that operational expenses during storms, or is that capital expenses?
It's operating capital, Jim.
I know what this line item is, but the way that the reimbursement, emergency situations, and when they give you money back to the town, if it's over what you spend, is that operational time, or is that?
It's both.
Capital and operations?
It can be both.
You can get reimbursed for a lot of different things on a, if they're gonna give us money back on emergency services or something like that. There's a lot of things that have to go into that. If they do that, usually takes a year and a half to get the reimbursement and a lot of work on a lot of.
But and I'm not, my understanding was it was what your expenses are to clear the roads and all that, but it doesn't include vehicles and plows.
No, it doesn't include capital equipment.
Yeah, so by taking this out, it does not affect your reimbursement.
These are 2 different things, that if you, see, each year, you have the ability to overspend your budget it's one of the only budget line items in the budget you can actually overspend based upon the number of storms.
In labor and
Yes,
effort, but not plows and equipment.
No, plow and equipment too. You're talking about a reimbursement, you're talking about 2 different things, reimbursement from the state or federal government. If in fact we had a major storm, that the feds will come out and actually give us some money back.
Yeah.
But we can't overspend. You can actually overspend that line and then raise it in the next year if you need to. All right, so we typically will actually, we put money away into the overlay to help offset that, so we actually cover that expense, but we wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't spend the exact amount that we had the previous year. You can spend more, but you can't spend less. That's the issue. And that's a
And
statutory.
you just didn't know that when it was
I just
taken
didn't
out?
know it when I did it, so that was just something otherwise I clearly wouldn't have done that.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
All right, next, we're going to water enterprise, which is 450. Move to increase the water enterprise salaries budget by $44,500 from $1,602,935 to $1,647,435.
Second.
For discussion, we're gonna vote on this, but I think this is one that maybe water and sewer should explain at town meeting and hold.
But I think we've all heard it.
No, I agree.
Okay.
But I'm just making a note now, with Roger here, that I think that's something.
I think they're going to anyway.
Okay.
I think if you read Mike Stanton's article that was in the paper last week about the water department and things we're doing, it pretty well explains the reason why we need to do this. The answer really is we need the clerk's position no matter what happens, whether we go to monthly billing or not. But we don't have an option of delaying monthly billing without putting us in jeopardy of the DEP cutting our withdrawal permit. And I wouldn't want to see the town take a chance on that in a million years. We are already reduced, we have reduced withdrawals now that they've been imposing on every town in the Commonwealth for years. And if they reduce it further, we're gonna have to run them under emergency conditions all the time, 100% of the time. So we need to go to the monthly system to be, because it's part of an agreement that we have made with DEP 2 years ago. And it's one element of 5, but I think if we don't do it and they find out we're not doing it, they may impose conditions on us that we don't want to live with.
Okay.
So Roger, can I ask the other towns that are around on wells as well? They're not doing
Yeah,
monthly billing?
Plainville's under imposed withdrawal. There are many towns in the state that are.
But many more that are not, though, I think, right?
Yeah, some are not on stressed aquifers. That's one of the issues.
And this is my own 2 cents, you can take it as you want, but I think for me, understanding that, it's more important to understand that piece than why we need to move to monthly billing. Because if we've already committed to it, instead of focusing on we need to do monthly billing to prevent leaks and to help the elderly, and I think the focus is.
And the most important thing is that this has been planned ahead, and it's funded. And if you divide the cost that we're asking for in this budget by the total water budget, it would actually result in a reducing a water rate by 0.007 cents.
Less than 1 cent.
It's a start, Roger.
A victory for Jim. Any further questions?
I can guarantee you that the Water and Sewer Commission is not going to vote to lower the rate by 0.007 cents. And we need the position. We needed it for years. We haven't had any increase in administrative positions in water for a good long time. I mean, since long before I came here. And I have really pushed to improve the water system since I've been here. And I think we've come a long ways, but we still got a bit to go.
Thank you, Roger. Any other further questions? All those in favor? Opposed?
All right, so library.
610.
Library, 610. So move to increase the library capital outlay budget by $3,000 from 0 to 3,000.
So just for, so
Second.
you're second first, I'm sorry. So just for edification, this is for IT equipment replacement that they've been planning on. They actually have grants for some of it, but they want to do the whole thing, and this would give them the amount of money to match that. So it will allow them to do the whole thing.
Do we know what kind of IT?
I'm sorry?
Do we know what kind of IT?
They're actually computers themselves.
Oh, like just the,
They're computers,
okay.
yeah.
Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, so that'll be our second tied.
All right, and then the last one is 915 on the last page. Move to increase the group health life insurance budget by $48,000 from $8,610,906 to $8,658,906.
Second.
So this is one where I actually think I can actually give you some money back. Because if we don't fund the additional position in finance, that we can actually reduce some of the funding for this. So my guess, we estimated this today, that would be somewhere around $15,000 in that range. So instead of increasing it to 48,000, you might be able to increase it by 33,000.
Which that 33 is what?
It would be 33,000 into that line.
No, but I mean, what's the 30, the rationale?
That would be for any other, includes the position in water, includes the, I'm not sure what it.
Would it be the three?
I think it's the public safety,
Public safety,
three
yeah, improvements.
policemen.
Right, police and fire, so, right.
I think it's 16,000 per employee, the insurance.
Yeah, so
So you've got
I had that, so
three.
that's what I had, 16,000, but it was 3 employees.
Yeah,
Come up with-
we estimated 15,000 today, but, 16,000, yeah.
I got the number
16,000.
from Jimmy. He said 16,000 a year for insurance.
So that's 32,000.
So
I
should
would
we
say-
amend?
So you can amend it, you
Amendment?
can say, I would recommend that you increase it by 33,000 instead of 48,000.
Okay, so let me just amend that. So move to increase the group health life insurance budget by $32,000.
33.
33, sorry.
Sorry.
I have it written down,
That's okay.
33 in
That's
front of
all
me.
right.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
And that was the last one.
That was it.
That was the last one. Thank you.
So just procedurally now, and I might need you again, Frank, are we all set, or do we now have to vote for these 12 items?
I assume you guys were just voting while we just.
Yeah, we just
We just
voted,
did.
yeah.
So we voted for the amendment, which votes for them, and we're good.
So there were two lines that were a tie,
Correct,
so that results in no action.
correct.
So that would have to be reconsidered, if the board so wills, at the town meeting, before the town meeting.
For the town meeting.
Because I think that'll be the first opportunity we'll see Chairman Mitchell be back, quite honestly.
All right, Greg? Thank you. Appreciate you guys coming. It was a strange way to get there.
We'll talk again.
But it was important you guys were here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Roger.
Sorry for the long discussion.
No,
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got
not about the budget, but we're moving on.
All right, I'm sorry. Oh, Joan, I'm sorry.
Sort of let a lot of input, I didn't think there was going to be, or you allowed it. So could I say something?
Yes?
Or is this for town meeting?
It's for town meeting, actually, but I think what, you've been talking about comparing to other towns.
Oh, hold on just a second, Joan. You gotta come up so people can hear you.
Just take 3 minutes.
Good. You can take 2.
You know, I just heard a whole lot of Joan Gallivan, 9 Cannon Forge Drive in Foxborough, and I would like to get up at town meeting before they have the discussions, because you people have been talking about this all night, comparing us to other towns and things like that. And I moved here 54 years ago, and the population was 14,900. And today, it's something like 16,900. We've just become 17,000. That's phenomenal. Did you hear what I said? 14,900 to 16,900? You know, it's not that accurate.
That it hasn't increased.
It's 17,500 now, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, but we're saying with all those years, it hasn't.
All those 54 years, and that's what people are looking at, and you've been talking about people have come to you, and the seniors say. And we're satisfied with a really nice Chevy or something, and we don't want, you know, to move up to the Cadillac or the Tesla. And so I think that's what I'm trying to say, too. You know, we are a very lucky town because of the income we get that isn't back from the state and so forth. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so that's what I think they're trying to say, and we do need to be careful what's going on, because we keep spending, making our towns better and better, but, you know, you've got to come to a point and realize we didn't grow from 8,000 to 24,000 like Norton did, or Franklin did, or Mansfield, so you can't compare. Even Plainville, you know, these towns have really, really grown tremendously. Go look at some statistics and demographics. So that's really amazing, so I think that's what some people are getting at, and so that's why I wanted to make a point of that.
Right.
You
So-
should think
so
about
Joan,
that too.
Just to make a
So our
point.
police department, our fire department, you know, we're pretty much the same, Patriot Place and so forth, but, you know, so.
So the average median age in the town of Foxborough is 45 years old. It's actually coming down.
Okay,
So
so,
the population is changing. It may not increase, it may not be increasing, but it is changing.
well, it's nothing like you're talking about. You've got to look at what has happened all around here and what exists. That's what it is. That's all I'm trying to make a point of that.
Thank you.
So anyway, all right, so remember, that's what Foxborough is, and that's what we wanted to keep, and we've got to reflect that in our budgets.
Thank you, Joan.
Okay, thank you.
Finance Director position discussion. I think, Mike, you're gonna.
I'm going to turn it over to Mike, but just generally speaking, what we have presented to you is a revised job description that we just updated based on latest information. I provided you a draft announcement. I also, Leah had made a suggestion this afternoon to me about maybe sharing that with one of our subject matter experts, which is Todd Hassett, who happens to live in our community, and he's going to help us with the search process. So I did send that to him, so he has that.
And how about Mr. Yukna as well?
I haven't given it to Bill, but I'll
I would like to see
give it to
him,
Yeah, I'll
yeah.
give it to him. I'll give it to Bill.
One item I'd like to see added to the job description is financial forecasting.
Okay.
It kind of says it, but it doesn't say it.
Fair enough.
I think that's a very important part of the job description for the finance director.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We did, that's what we were indicating, but we didn't come right out and say it. And that's a very important role that Randy has played for us, and that we've, the finance directors before him, including Todd Hassett, did do for us, and so I'll put that in. So what we're looking to do is, once we have approval and recommendation from you as a board, we're prepared with this recommendation, anything else you propose, and then some feedback from Todd and Bill to go ahead and post this job right away, and then move into a multi-phase interview process. We're going to leave open the opportunity for phone interviews. That's what we've done for all of our positions in the past. However, if we have a small pool of people that we're looking at, we may jump right to face-to-face interviews. But right now, we're looking at phone interviews towards the end of May, and then subject matter face-to-face interviews the beginning of June, and then peer face-to-face interviews, including department heads, and we do expect to, as I had approached the board early and spoken with Leah, include her in this process. And then we're looking to bring the finalists to meet with the finance department staff during the day of June 11th, and then later bring the finalist in front of you on your board on June 11th, and we'd like to bring them into executive session at 5:30 that evening, and for you to meet and interview them.
That would be the semifinalists. Finalists would have to be an open session.
Right, that'd be the semifinalists.
So to clarify, Mr. Hassett and Mr. Yukna will look at the job description. They will be part of the committee. And, I just want to say
It's true.
I just want to say, I keep hearing a lot about the limited pool of municipal, finance directors, but I just would like to point out, there may be a limited pool, but both Mr. Yukna and our former finance director came from the private sector. So I don't want to limit ourselves to only this narrow, everyone keeps talking about this narrow pool.
Thank you. That's actually a great point. I'm glad you brought it up, because there is a small pool in the municipal side, and we are trying to reach out to beyond that,
Okay.
because there are good people coming
Yeah,
in from
we don't
outside.
limit it to just those areas. We look at the wider, the various services that we can provide.
So we'll post to
We'll
what I
post
call
to-
your private
Right.
mainstream.
Glassdoor,
Okay.
or any one of those,
Okay.
those
Absolutely.
outlets. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out, because that is something we're heavily
Yeah, we
considering.
don't limit it. I mean, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but certainly there has been some really talented folks that have come in, made that.
Yeah, I mean, those two examples have been quite successful coming
No
from the
question,
private world,
no
so.
question,
Absolutely.
no question.
Mike, can I ask you on the qualifications and experience? The minimum requirements are bachelor's only, and 5 years' experience only. Master's is only preferred, and CPA and CGA is preferred. It seems like for a $90 million budget, you would want somebody more than what the bachelor's and only 5 years' experience. Where did those limits come from?
So I agree with your question entirely. We want all of those things. We want the master's degree, we want the CGA, we want the CPA, we want the more experience. But the reason we've worded it that way is to open that pool to get back to exactly what Leah just raised. Folks coming from the corporate side are going to be less likely to have the master's degree. Not that there won't be some, but they're going to be less likely because There's a lot of money out there because they can be very successful without having to go and pay
Get the
for
masters.
and earn and spend the time to get a master's degree. There are going to be more people applying from outside the municipal world without a higher degree. There'll be some. And the CGA, that's a certified government accountant, so folks coming from that aren't in municipal government or state government already, they're very unlikely to have the CGA unless they came from government, went to corporate, and then they're coming back. So that's why we don't want to lock ourselves to having to have a master's degree, having to have the CGA. We want to give ourselves a little latitude to cast a wider net, and then we want to bring in an interview to getting the best, most qualified people.
But I think your question is exactly what I want the subject matter experts to look at and to weigh in on, because, you know, they really know what.
Yeah, because if you hire somebody with just a bachelor's, only 5 years' experience, and no accreditation past that, it's possible that they can get this job. Probably highly unlikely, but you're just opening it up to get more
Right.
candidates.
Casting a wider net, that's all.
To more candidates that we can start narrowing from. We'd rather not have 8 applicants. We'd rather have, 50 applicants and then work from there to get the best qualified candidate for the town.
The people that come in, we're gonna look at really hard are the ones that have all of those credentials that we want, that we seek. But you know as well as I do, there are people out there that are highly talented that just never went that extra mile to get that degree.
Can you let us know what the changes are, if any, that come out of those 2 reviews, just so
Sure.
that, it's just so that we don't get the new document, it's easy to kind of compare and say.
Yeah, so this is the board's hire, as you all are aware, but so that folks at home are aware, this is the board is doing this hire, and so that any of those recommendations that come in that make sense to incorporate, this will be going back out to the board before.
But I just like track changes or something. I get it will come back out to us, but I just want it to be really clear if the subject matter experts make any changes, what that feedback is.
Sure, I can send that as a word with track changes, direct email to all of
Perfect.
you. Sure. Other
Thank you.
questions?
Any other questions?
The one question we put a hiring range of 110 to 125.
So you can,
I'm curious to see if that, in fact, is a competitive range.
so,
So,
once you add master's degree,
yeah.
CPA, CGA, salary
The numbers gonna
requirements are gonna
right,
go up.
That's right.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Right. I just want to, I do want to get that same feedback.
I think the subject matter experts should weigh in on that too, yeah.
I agree.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
thank you for the feedback.
Reappoint interim finance director and town accountant.
So, I regret that we did not address this the last time when we should have. But we now, Christine has been doing the role and continues to do the role, and I think she does a great job. And I would continue to recommend that she stay in that role until the new appointment is made.
I was gonna say, can we word it that way?
Yeah, I would recommend that you do that, only because
I still don't mind revisiting it though, every 30 days. It takes us 2 seconds. We keep
Well,
talking
let's
about
let's
it.
do 30 instead of 2 weeks, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying, it could even be 2 months, whatever we want to do. I just like that it keeps the dialogue open.
I'm hoping that within 2 to 3 months, we'll have the position filled.
Okay, so are you okay, like 30 days or 60 days, or do we have a preference?
30 days.
30,
Okay.
is fine.
30.
Okay.
Very good.
So move to reappoint Christine Dupress as the interim finance director, town accountant, from April 16th, 2019 to, I'm going to go with May 14th, 2014? That's a month?
Yes.
Well, because we didn't go back before, so that, do we want to go 6 weeks then?
backtrack.
Yeah.
Do we want to go to May 28th?
Yeah,
Okay, let's go to May 28th, to May 28th.
thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
A little policy discussion on social media code of conduct. Bill, are you bringing that up, or are you bringing that up, Mike?
So.
I'm going to defer to Mike on this one.
Sure. So, I'm not sure exactly where the board wanted to go with this. So we do have, basically, over the last 4 years or so, the town has introduced 10 new policies, 9. And I attended a human resource conference last fall where they suggested that, that any good, well-operating municipality ought to have these top 10 policies, HR policies. And I was glad to see that we have 9 of them. The 10th one we've taken up, that was an ADA policy. We've run that past our HR council, who recommended that we don't bring up our own ADA or, Americans with Disability Act policy, because it's a federal act. Why mimic what we have? So we have the 9 policies. I think the 2 that you wanted to focus on this evening, but I don't want to be presumptive, were social media and conduct, standards of conduct, civility policy. So we have, the board has approved those, Bill has signed those, we've published those. We've conducted training on the standards of conduct and civility policy, and the social media is the one that we next need to train on.
So, I mean, I can say what my concerns are here, if you are okay with that.
So long as Mike's done.
Sure, I'd prefer to hear the concerns first,
Okay.
and then take it from there.
So I know, being the newest selectman, when I came in, I got my Town of Foxborough Board of Selectmen handbook. I went through, I signed all these policies with the assumption that, for example, the social media policy in this day and age applies to everyone. If you look under the definitions, it's defined as the town. It defines officials, it defines officials as elected or appointed, and it goes through employees and users and social media. And I signed this policy, and it was, when I sat down with Mary Beth, we went over it. Come to find out that it only applies to town employees in the truest sense. So it's great that we have policies, but I feel a policy is a little bit useless if we can't act on those policies. Ms. Harding came up and, mentioned social media. I'd have to have you refresh me on, some of the points in it. But, we as officials, and I'm speaking for myself, can go out to social media and, we can post what we want. But I think where the line in the sand needs to be drawn is if I go out and I say, my name's Leah Gibson, I'm a selectman, and we're changing the name of this road, to North Street, versus, hey, that road runs east to west, I think we should change it to West Street. There's a very different way you can use your social media and your elected or appointed, position. So I personally have seen a couple of times now, particularly, I'm a member of this board, and this particular person is coming back on this date, or, making really broad statements that, when it comes down to it, I think we need to be able to say, that's not right. You have freedom of speech, yes, but you cannot go out to a platform and say, my name is, Joe from the planning board or from the historical commission, and speak on behalf of the town. So I think that some of these policies need to be revisited, and I don't think we need to get there tonight and figure out what it is, but I think it's great that we're ahead of the curve and we have these policies, but if in the end the civility policy doesn't apply to this group and the social media policy doesn't apply to this group, and then there's nothing we can do, then kind of what's the point of the policy? So I think we need to look at them, revisit them, and then I think we need to look at how we enforce certain policies. So, I get an employee, you have a very prescribed way that you can handle such things, but, as elected or appointed officials, I think we need to, and it could just be, that they're found in violation of it and it goes in a file for the future. But I think in the day and age that we are, and things once they're thrown out there can't be taken back, and in the absence of conversation, things that are thrown out there go from rumor to perceived reality. We need to guard ourselves and have a more firm policy to address things that I do not believe are addressed in these policies.
Okay.
And I know, I've spoken at length with Bill, about this, so I think kind of where I stand and what I mean.
You've raised some really good points, all right, and I welcome the conversation and dialogue, because it's a very delicate issue when it comes to dealing with elected officials and appointed officials. We don't disagree that there should be standards of conduct that people should abide by, and I think they should follow them, because it's just in the best interest of the organization when that happens. we put these out there because, you know something, there were no policies that address these things. And by putting it out there, we're sort of saying to ourselves, as an organization, we want to try and go to that level. The challenge we face is that people have sort of, they have civil rights, they have, you know, they have constitutional rights that they can do about certain things, and you can't cross that line either. This sort of gets in that gray area of, you know, what's the appropriate thing to be doing? What's the appropriate practices of an elected and appointed official? And, you know, if we all sort of live by those rules and try to follow those rules and just give examples periodically why this is just a bad practice, I think we'll be all better off as an organization when that happens.
And just to take you to an extreme example, so we know now, I came in, I don't know if any of you guys have signed these, but I came in and I signed this policy and I got the impression that I had to adhere to this policy, which, come to find out, it really doesn't apply to elected or appointed officials, even though they're defined in the policy. Let's say the town gets into, like, a God forbid, I mean, you hear about situations, though, someone goes out and posts hate speech, or, you know, something that is tied to a personnel issue. I think that there's true open liability to the town here, so it's not about, is what someone thinks someone's doing professional or right or wrong. This is about protecting the town from liability and having policies that people understand that they have to adhere to and that have consequences. And I'm not saying the consequence is a fine or, you know, them being removed, but you know what? It's talked about, maybe they come in front of the board and then it's put in a file and it's.
But I think we should have a dialogue as to what that means for the appointed and elected officials. And perhaps this board or some other board, I'm not sure if this is the right board or not, but it seems like it is, should address this issue as to how you want to handle it, because quite honestly, it's going to be a delicate situation for the administrative staff to deal with those things, especially if you appoint the individual or their elected officials. It's a challenging issue because, you know, there's very little things that we can do. Now, on the employee side, we're pretty consistent about that. In fact, I can probably tell you in the past year, we've dealt with at least 3 or 4 situations with this kind of situations occurred, and we've dealt with it.
Yeah, and I think that was a lot easier.
Actually, it's more like weekly.
It's a lot easier.
But even when I went and looked at the personnel bylaw, I'm a little rusty now, but I think that, you know, it's easy to say, well, Strong Town Manager Act, and you guys appoint them, but then there's some stuff that you can't touch. Like, there's a lot of these kind of gray areas, and when I look at the consolidated personnel bylaw, which is very new from 2017, I think that you are authorized, and I'm reading this word for word from it right here, right now. Further, the town manager is authorized to appoint, discipline, suspend, or remove town officers, department heads, or principal deputies or agents of elected or appointed boards or officers. So I do think it's a little bit of your problem.
Well, of elected, appointed, oh, so that's the key, of elected. See, I can deal with the employees, which we do. It's the elected officials themselves I cannot deal with. I don't have that authority.
So when that talks about appointed and elected, so when I was the veteran service officer, I was appointed, because you have to be appointed at the state level for that. The town clerk is an elected official. So there are different, you know.
It doesn't say that, though. I mean, this says appointed and elected officials, black and white.
Right, so we could probably clarify that.
Yeah, so you can't pick and choose, well,
Right.
that does apply to this official, but it doesn't apply to this official.
You're right,
so-
there's room for clarity there. And as I, you know, in preparing for policy discussion, I went through all our policies again this week, just because I didn't know where this would go. And I did, I circled a bunch of areas where, you know, we could use some more clarity. And you brought up, the first one that came to my mind is the definitions page on the front of the social media policy. And you're right, we talk about the town, and then we get down to officials, then employees. But really, we go after that, that's the last time that officials are mentioned, because it's all about employees. And I think we do need some clarity there.
But then
We
to
need
have HR have me come in and sign it, you know what I mean? That's where the disconnect is. And these aren't bad policies.
I don't
Policies are
disagree
gonna
with you.
live and grow and breathe
I
and
agree.
change based on what happens. Like, that's,
Well, see, policies are an ever-evolving situation.
Exactly, so that's-
we're not offended by this discussion at all.
I absolutely agree with your point, so there's room for clarity.
and we could think of everything under the sun and then something else can come up. And, you know, we do need to have another discussion, and we need to track We need to make sure it's in everyone's file. We need to, same thing with civility, we need to make sure everyone's taken the training. I know personally, I couldn't make the one in person. I have not taken the training. I think we need to track that. We talked about that. So I think there's just room for improvement to sharpen our pencils.
Yep, I agree with you. And I know you and Bill talked earlier today, there is a recorded training for the civility training for anyone who couldn't make it. And, there were quite a few options, but for people who are working, during the hours that the training was offered, it's easier for employees here internally than it is for board and committee and commission members. So we recorded it, but we didn't make that link readily available to you. So we're going to be emailing that out tomorrow. And we have tracked a matrix of who has been trained and who has not. So we'll go ahead and reach back out. But we didn't make that link available on the website on purpose. And that is because we want to be able to track who did it and who didn't. So if we just put the link out there, people might be trained or might not, and we haven't tracked it. But we do have a responsibility, though, to go back, look at our matrix, and reach out to our folks who are serving on boards, committees, and commissions who, we haven't certified that they've been trained. But I will go ahead and there are a few people that, and we'll send that link out, and then we'll continue to, you're right, we have room for improvement in that area.
And when something does get lobbed out there, like, let's say, to use the extreme example, like hate speech or something, we don't really have a good policy about how we as a town protect ourselves. And, once something's out there, it's out there. And how do we take that back, and what do we do so that we're not getting into long, drawn-out periods where we don't address stuff, and then rumors fly, and,
I think it was great you brought it up, and it's here today, and we would love for you to research it more. I'm sorry, Jim, were you about to say something too?
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and bring back what maybe other towns have done, how to enforce it better, what wording needs to be done.
Sure. So these policies, I won't claim the authorship for these because I didn't write these. But I will take responsibility for seeing if we can't update, make some improvements. They were based on best practices in municipal HR. But that being said, I have found some areas where we can improve. So what I'll do is if you want to pick a policy, I'll start with that. Otherwise, I'll probably start with either standards of conduct or actually probably start with social media. Since
we should start with the two.
Since it's the hot topic and since we haven't done the training on that one yet. I would start on that one and present maybe some improvements to that, bring it back to the board for your consideration.
I'm actually glad to see that this is a policy discussion because you are the chief policy board, so we should have this conversation. I appreciate that.
So to that point, a lot of these are new and from your predecessor. And the statements made tonight, and I've heard it in the past, that we haven't had policies before, and now we've got 10 of them. There's a little bit of a detriment to that, too. We have had policies. We've had a lot of policies. These came fast, and they came through your predecessor, and she had said in the past, showing it to other towns and how good Foxborough is. I remember when the social media policy came up, and it was related to an employee, when the power was out, posted something like, "Don't call us. What do you want us to do about it?" or something like that. Doesn't matter what department. All of a sudden, the policy pops up, and everyone jumps on it. There's a responsibility from the selectmen when we have these policies that they're read through, they're understood, and they're trained. So when you pick up the social media policy, it's clearly defined officials, individuals hold office in the town, whether elected or appointed. New policy makes sense. We get trained on it. When push comes to shove, we've got, and look over the last couple of months, we've got chairman of the personnel board telling everybody on social media when the finance director is coming back. I think everybody's jaw dropped. There was a complaint, can you do something about it? We'll do something about it. Oh, look and behold, we can't because the policy's not written right. Okay, and it goes on. I mean, look at the postings over.
There was something done, and not probably to the extent that you're referring to, but I know Bill made a couple of calls to the extent that he felt his power extended to do that.
But it continued, and it went into further posts, and then it went into different boards posting about their opinion of which fire station proponent was better, and they're on the planning board. So it just kept going. So if something was done, it's either ineffective or it's being ignored or something. So this policy is only as good as when it's challenged, and it went out the window for the recent activity. Then you look at and this was actually, we discussed this a lot, and the code of conduct. All of a sudden, we've got a code of conduct policy. There was an issue where it was being tested against an employee, and what you said before, we didn't have any policy, so we didn't have to act on it. Here it was the opposite. We had a policy that came to us by the personnel back in June of 2017. Months later, an issue comes up, but we can't hold an employee accountable to this because they weren't trained in it. Non-union, not trained in it. But yet it's on our website, and we're bragging to other towns that we have this policy. Because when I asked, why is this on our website, if it's not valid and the selectmen already signed it, when's it gonna be valid? It was scheduled a year after we signed it, and in a public meeting where we approved it as selectmen and put our signature, it was stated in a few months it'll go into effect. So now we're waiting a year, it's posted, it's a new policy under this administration, and it's completely ineffective. We were better off not having a policy that people weren't trained in, and you could use common sense and say, bad behavior, so this did actually more harm. And I can go on an example.
In our handbook, just to point out, because I didn't even know this until I just opened it, we have a separate selectmen's code of conduct policy. I don't know, does this trump it, does it predate it, but I was just given this, so.
That was before that one came.
So this binder should have that in it, not this, so it's just, you know.
And I think,
Another
and Mike, I'm
inconsistency.
speaking to you, but I know you weren't here over the last couple of years.
No, but I need to be involved
Yeah.
with you and with Bill in bringing, some of this change to fruition.
So when complaints come in and there's no feedback of, you're saying things were addressed, and I know there's an incredible amount of frustration reading social media, and it's free speech, I'll be the first one to say it, but there's consequences for that. What do? Do we complain to you? Do we complain to the town manager? Do we have this at a meeting? It's a black hole, and a lot of it is because we wanted to have all these new policies, but yet if I asked when anyone's trained, or it's a free-for-all right now, in my opinion. So there used to be a spreadsheet of when it came, but it only came in effect when I asked questions and there was an issue. Then a spreadsheet came up with, I think, 20 different policies with all the schedule of events of when people are going to get trained, and then it disappeared again. So this only comes up when there's an issue, and when there's no issue, nobody pays attention to it. So I'm looking for some continuity and some common sense when you're writing this up. If you say, define one person that's responsible, but then go through the reading of it, and there's no teeth in it for that person, it was poorly written. So maybe it's a committee that needs to do this, maybe we take, and then your predecessor is gone now. So you can't even ask, I don't know how these policies were written, if it was a committee or what.
I think it was Jack Dolan, but I think we need to look at who's on that.
Sure, so this was.
Revisiting
Those came out of the personnel board.
But Jack Dolan was integral in helping to.
He helped.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, they were based on municipal HR best practices, so they weren't written in a vacuum, but then they went to the personnel board, and then, Attorney Jack Dolan, who's our HR, counsel.
So maybe we need to look at that, because it's scary that the personnel board who's writing it.
No, they didn't write it.
Okay,
They-
I'll leave it at that, but it's scary.
But the second piece of that is maybe they did a exquisite job, and they did their job, and they gave it to the town, but does it really take us a year to train somebody in a code of conduct?
See, that really wasn't the issue though, Jim, and I think, I think I've said this over and over again, is that when you have collective bargaining agreements, you have to go through each one of those agreements to do that, and that does take time. That can take
Well,
almost a year.
and we talked about this, but when you're a non-union person,
Right.
and you shouldn't have to. So if when
see
the
it-
personnel board brought it to us, and we signed it that night, someone should have said it's gonna take us a year, because these have ramifications
Fair enough.
with the union, and it wasn't discussed. So a
Yeah.
year later, and it's posted on the website, it was a mess up.
So
And-
I think what you're referring to, though, is that we set out, we did bring in 10 new policies that weren't really in place. There were some policies, but none of them related to these types of issues. So, so to say there is no policy, I think what we said, that the policies that we have in place now are the best practices policies that we've been told are the best ones we should have. However, by putting those all into the mix, there was a lot of things we had to get accomplished in a relatively short period of time. The code of conduct policy was the last one in that list of policies that we put in place. And by the way, most communities don't even have that. I'll be honest with you, they don't.
But I
It is
think-
scary.
I'm sick of hearing how bad other communities are. Just because the bar is low doesn't mean that the bar being low is okay for us.
I'm not suggesting
You
that.
know,
All I'm saying.
it's frustrating to hear that.
We're trying to get to that point.
Yeah.
But, and it is frustrating for us as well. Because, quite honestly, this kind of dialogue is a good thing. It's helpful to do this kind of dialogue. But, we can agree on how things got rolled out, how they did it. But the fact is, we're still doing it. We're doing it, which is comparison to a lot of places that aren't even touching this stuff. I'm glad we have it. And I'm glad we're having these conversations. I'm glad we're having this debate. Because you know what? We can do better. I agree with that.
So the policies are great, but if they don't have defined ramifications, at least defined minimum ramifications for everybody,
Right.
then they're no good. Okay?
Well,
So just
yeah.
because you want a policy to have some teeth, okay?
Yeah.
You want the policy to almost act like a deterrent. Okay, if I violate this policy, this is gonna happen. You read the policies, it's like, yeah.
Well, I think the challenge is this. Our policies are primarily built around our employees, primarily. We've taken those and actually moved them over to elected officials and appointed officials, where the ramifications and the enforcement of ramifications is much more complicated.
So then we need to address that complication.
I agree.
And if we need to change charters, we need to bring that up as a warrant article and
You gotta be
change charter.
careful too, because the other side of that is that you have very few people wanting to get involved in government today.
I understand.
So it's a fine,
I
it's a fine
promise you,
line.
we're not the only
It's a fine
community battling with social media issues,
No question.
okay? It's prevalent everywhere.
Right.
So let's address it. Let's not just bury our head in the sand now.
I agree.
Let's address it
I
and
agree with that.
see what happens.
I think on the standard of conduct civility policy, towards the end, it talks about let me read it. It's expected that everyone will abide by the code of conduct and remind colleagues and peers of their obligations. It's the responsibility of the committee, commission, and board chairs, as well as the town manager and department heads, to enforce the code of conduct. I think we can take that a step further, and then I think we can transfer that sort of language into the social media, because we don't have that there, where we hold chairs of boards and committees and commissions responsible to police their own, and then, being the chief policy board for the town, I think the buck stops here.
So
For elected officials, I think it comes to the voters, really. If they find that someone's, either.
But there's in a lot of cases, a lot of time lapse.
There is.
Between that. So I think, here it says violations will not be tolerated and may result in disciplinary action. It should say such as, but not limited to, and there should be some examples.
Because everyone up here has I feel like for me, the four of us here, we have the professionalism, the respect, and the understanding that if something, and I've had this personally happen to me, is lobbed out that's incorrect, I'm not gonna go out there and, get into a war with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have that common sense and professionalism baseline, but there needs to be something done. If that doesn't happen, there needs to be some teeth to it, because we can't go out there and get into those kind of matches if something's not correct. So it's great as a policy, but there needs to be more.
So I'm glad we're having that level of dialogue, because this is how it gets better.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a question. This is great discussion, and most of us, maybe the,
Yeah, sorry, Steph, you got to come up.
okay, I'm sorry. Most of us are at the generation where, Stephen Gowan, 19 Rosalie, are at in the generation that, when we were young, kids just, you battled it out and you talked face to face. Now they're hide behind their phones. And so it is very hard to have the policy and then to decide what you're going to do when someone breaks that policy. But I think I recall when I first got on AdCom, when I had to go on to the ethics, it pretty much tells you that you are an employee of the town, even though you're not being compensated. So is that the same with, so you're appointed, I know because that's appointed. So the elected, is that the same when you take your ethics? So
that's, I can try to answer that if you
yeah,
like.
because I feel like you guys want the policy to work, but it's hard to.
It is hard. So, yeah, like when we all take the same state ethics test, so that's, it's not town policy, it's state ethics, but same thing applies. So yes, it applies, even though the one for committees, boards, and commissions is a slightly different test at state ethics, because the questions are more, geared towards content of what boards would deal with as opposed to employees. But the bottom line is, they're treating us all as employees in that regard. The difficulty, not that we should shy away from it, but the difficulty is in implementation, and Bill and I have been involved in dialogue with our labor attorney on how do we do this, and when this was raised, what do we do? We can't fire a volunteer who's been elected or appointed to a board, committee, commission. Because we're frustrated. What do we do after that phone call? And they said, it's probably time to not renew that person if they violate it, if it's hate speech, if it's something like that. I got to be honest with you. I have 2 Facebook accounts, 2 Twitter accounts, and I haven't been on either one in a year. Yeah. So I'm totally blind to what goes on in social media, and that doesn't. I'm not trying to say that excuses me from knowing what goes on in a policy, but I'm really not involved in that. But we do need to look at that, and
because I can only speak for myself. I mean, I was a frequenter on the Foxborough discussion site, and when I went in and met with Frank, and he said, no social media for town business. Your personal stuff is your personal stuff,
right?
And so so that's it. I don't make any comments. So what David said about the policy, they're great policies, but if they don't have any teeth and there aren't any consequences, this is how I look at it. If the town manager or the HR director makes a phone call and says, hey, this isn't acceptable to us, but it continues, it's not right. Whether it's a, so I understand your frustration, but I think.
So you realize, and you're not wrong. Everything you said is right, and it's the frustration that we feel.
Yeah.
Your charter doesn't have a removal provision in it. And something, that's controversial when you have that, because because sometimes that can be misused and it can turn into a weapon. And I think a lot of communities don't go in that direction for that reason. However, if there's a way that people can be brought with the chairman of the committee sitting down with that person and say, look, this is how we operate. This is the way we operate in this community, and this is what is expected of you. That's the kind of dialogue you want to have with somebody, because it's assumed. There's a certain level of assumption that people are going to bring a certain level of professionalism to their role. And if they don't do that, then they shouldn't serve in that role. Mm-hmm. And elections change that. Boards don't reappoint people that don't serve in that role properly.
Right.
Those are the only
teeth we have.
Teeth you have.
Non-reappointment.
It should be in the policy.
Fair enough. That's fair.
That this.
Yeah.
I mean, David, there was like home run. I mean, the policies are great, but I mean, I just wanted to say, as someone who's serving on a committee, that I was told it, and I said okay, and I just don't go on social media, and it's
some people, you would hope that they would. That's the reaction.
And I think 99.9% of people do.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So I guess I just have a request, which is, while you guys are talking about how to revamp the policies and training and stuff, I guess my request would be, would you also think about how the town is going to respond? Because just like Leah was saying, someone goes out there and says something about an elected or an appointed official, another board member goes out and posts something that is not true about me. Now, I am not gonna get down in the dirt with that person and get into a fight with them on social media. I'm not gonna do that. So, but just like Leah said, it stays out there, it doesn't get addressed. Now suddenly people believe it because nobody's refuting it. So, as I talked about earlier, that is exactly what happened to me, and I went to Bill, and Bill did his best to address it, and that's when we figured out that our policies don't allow the town a mechanism to properly address it. So, they said, we're gonna do our best. We're gonna make phone calls, we're gonna put it on the agenda, we're gonna try to fix it. All of that is great as a deterrent, and, like Leah was saying, if you decide down the road, do you wanna reappoint this person or whatever, but it doesn't do anything to help the person who the posts and the statements are about. So I guess my response would be, what I thought was gonna happen was, when I was meeting with town administrators, the best we could come up with was a statement that would be issued, that I thought was gonna happen tonight, but didn't, which is why I came, that would attempt to at least correct the misinformation that was posted by another board member. So just like you said, if you posted, I'm gonna change the name of this street to North Street. Now, if nobody ever goes out and responds, then why wouldn't I believe you? You're a selectman, you've posted that that street's now gonna be North Street. So I guess I would ask that this board consider, even if it's some type of a stock response like the town was gonna read tonight, that says those comments shouldn't be made by town officials, they are untrue, they should not be relied upon. Just something so that the person that is affected by it, or people that are reading it, don't believe it, basically. That's why I came and asked for this board's input, because I don't know how best to handle it, except that I'm certainly not gonna fight the battle on social media, because just like you said, I wouldn't do it.
And it's frustrating, I'm not talking about any specific incident, but there's sometimes a perception that people have more information than is readily available. And I know I've read stuff and I'm like, I don't have this information, but people are lobbing it out like fact, who are in certain positions, and it's just not right, and there's not much we can do, and people can't do that.
So it's a fine line, because quite honestly, the more you engage people in these things, the worse it gets.
But I think we can all look at each other and say no one is engaging anyone.
So the question is, how much of an engaging process do you want to have? I mean, it can come out from us, and it could be a standard response, as Heather refers to, which I think is not an unreasonable position to take, and say, look, statements made on social media are not always to be relied upon, because they're not always based in fact.
Yeah.
Something
Information comes from the town page and from the town website, and
Yeah, it's right. The official statement position of the town comes from the town's website and a town's website.
and I think that everyone needs to understand that, be trained on that, sign that, and get it. Because it's unfortunate, because once something's lobbed out there, and it could be something silly, or it could be something serious, it's out there.
So as an example, that Jim brought up, that misinformation about our town finance director that was posted, could we have potentially have said at this meeting that was incorrect? Or does that open up a...
You could. It was obviously a very delicate scenario, so the more you talk about it, the more it can sometimes stray into areas that you shouldn't talk about.
Or back into the statement you just said, sometimes reading stuff on social media isn't...
I think something like a more standard response is that official statements or actions from the town are stated on the town's website,
Or maybe this policy is...
in our Twitter page, or whatever the case may be.
Maybe this policy is, they are found in violation, it goes in their folder, and they have to delete whatever's out there, because something being deleted goes a long way. People go back and will look, and when something's not there, that sends a message.
But if they don't delete it, what are you
Then
going to
that's
do?
their prerogative, and they're found in violation, and something goes in their file.
Well, going back to it, there is some merit to, if you ignore it, it doesn't get worse. I'm a firm believer, if you ignore it, it does get worse. And I think what we've seen over the last couple months, it did get worse. And we've got somebody here that's saying it got worse and we want the board to do something. So ignoring it is one option. Addressing it is the other option. And it may be a little loud at the beginning, but if you get the message across, you're not dealing with this month after month after month and other victims coming up. We've got one board member, and the complaints came in, he's appointed by us. And he's on the agenda tonight to reappoint.
Our batch May appointments is
May.
like 4 pages of
Yeah,
appointments.
I'm not certain that person's on it.
Oh, he is. So the complaints came in, and the response was, he's appointed, he's elected, we can't do anything, you're gonna talk to this person. The buck stops, if you don't like it, don't appoint the person. But if the question is to the board, there was supposed to be a statement read tonight, all of a sudden there's no statement, we got somebody hanging in the wind here, we can continue to ignore it, which is fine, we can address it. The question is to the board, and what are we gonna do about it?
And I think there's a difference between an accident, like, oops, I crossed the line and whoa, I backpedaled, versus continually pushing it, getting spoken to, keep doing it. Just, there's a big difference there. Everyone makes mistakes, you know, we could all make mistakes.
All right, great discussion, thank you. Selectmen's update, anything from any of the board member? I think really the only thing I'd like to say is to thank Jim.
Enough of that. It's
No,
been
no,
going on
seriously, though, it needs to be done.
Well,
Of course it needs to be done. Thank you
I
for your 9
appreciate
years.
that.
We'll keep it simple, how's that?
I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I
Yeah.
had to do the pledge of allegiance. Yeah.
No, and then actually, I'll just take a quick opportunity. It's been 9 years. I'm leaving here probably better than when I came in from personally. I've met more people. It's a phenomenal group of volunteers, committee members, appointed, elected, second to none that I've worked with. I appreciate it. A lot of people that correspond with, I appreciate the input. And overall, I like obviously like hearing positive things, but I do like the criticism. I like the discussion. I like that we can do things better. And I think if there's one thing I can ask when I leave is Joni kind of brought it up. We've always been a small town. Our population is not rising. People look at this as a small town. Years ago, there was some selectmen that wanted to get rid of citizens' input, and it's a uncomfortable thing to get a bashing and not being able to respond. I've seen over the last few years that there is less discussion at this table and more prep outside of the table, and I hope that trend turns around a little bit and we have more discussion here, because, you know, there's a lot of, this is probably one of the few groups that people look at on Tuesday night to see things, and the dialogue is phenomenal to get more people involved. I mean, when I started at AdCom, I was probably the most unpolitical person. Someone asked me this is a true story, a question about something about conservation, and we're talking, and they said, well, you should come to the AdCom. They meet every Wednesday, and it happened to be the next week. I showed up, and we were talking at that time on the critical needs in the town, where the sewer was going to go. I joined in the conversation, I voted, and then they did the attendance, and they said, who are you? And I said, I was told to come here, and they said, you need to be appointed by the moderator. I had no idea who the moderator was, so that's when I first met Frank. But the point is, it doesn't take smart people, it takes committed people, and people to enjoy trying to make their town better. And this table is a phenomenal resource for that, and I just hope the dialogue continues at this table and not pre-prepared and given to us, because I think it's a disservice overall for not to having that discussion. And you know, it's not always the best discussion. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, I think it still needs to be at this. And you know, I focused on the volunteers and the committees, and it's a tremendous asset to town. But the staff, Bill included, and all you guys, great to work with, and I really thoroughly enjoyed. You know, we don't always agree, but at least you know, we have that dialogue.
That's democracy,
yeah,
right?
And I hope at the end of the day we continue on. So I ramble, but thank you to all the support that I've gotten.
Bill?
Well, I think would be remiss not to remind people that before we meet again is Election Day, although it's uncontested, get out and vote.
And town meeting.
Yeah, town meeting. I mean,
So, and thank you for saying that, because I was actually going to say, to remind people that it is important to vote, irrespective of the fact that there's no real races this year. It's still important to cast your vote, and I think I encourage everyone to do that, and exercise your democratic right to do that. And town meeting is coming up a week from Monday, and this is going to be a little different meeting than we've had in the past because of some of the things we went through tonight earlier. But at the end of the day, I hope, we'll all be able to come out of there with everybody holding their head high and just say we all did the right thing. That's all I ever hope for. Jim, I just want to say thank you for, we, like you said, we haven't always agreed, but you know what? I have tremendous respect for people who donate their time and give to this community, a free will of giving to this community in the way that you give it, just as any one of you do. But I know that 9 years is a long time to serve in this capacity, and I appreciate the service you've given to the community, and I just wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, appreciate that.
So just to let everybody know, we're still trying to grind through the budget process and the town meeting process to get us ready for town meeting, and want to just say that it's been a rough few weeks, but we're getting close to the end of that process, and we've got some new challenges ahead of us, as we all know, so we'll continue to work through those as well, but we're making good progress.
Thank you, Mike?
I've probably spoken plenty on this stuff, but I want to speak on another unrelated issue, and that's town collaboration. When we do that, we do it really well, and this town is really good at that. And I got a text a couple nights ago, I guess, and then had a chance to sit with Reverend Dudley and our new very popular VSO Ally back there on a really tough issue earlier today, and they tried pulling me back into it, and I said, no way, your new VSO is on board. But we deal with really tough things, and it's a small town, but we've got, we've got to deal with tough issues too. And, I was honored to be asked to come back in, and glad to leave that to our new folks. But, we get our churches, our committees and boards and commission members, our employees, our residents involved in things that are really tough to wrap your arms around when it comes to opioid issues, when it comes to, family issues, elder issues, people that are thinking an end in their lives. You think that stuff goes on every day. And I really appreciate being a part of this town that can come together. And we can disagree really well, but we can also wrap arms around doing things really well when we got to. And so it's a great town to be part of. I'm glad that Ally has joined us.
Me too.
So, thank you.
All right, got a few agenda items, and, did I miss something?
She's here for the permit for Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. That's all part, that's in the next piece.
Oh, is that part of action items?
Your action items.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we're doing action items now.
We got a lot. 14 of them.
Jump to hers right away.
Yeah, so let's jump to hers right away. So this is Veteran Services Public Event Application. So move to approve Veteran Services Public Event Application for Memorial Day on May 27th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just since Ally's here, did you want to say something about it?
I
or-
was hoping to.
That was a long 4 hours.
We've enjoyed the speeches.
She's been sitting with bated breath the whole night.
It's passed a lot about
I'm
this time.
starving.
If you're going to thank Jim, forget it. Thanked enough.
Public service. No, I really don't have anything to say. I just, I changed the program a little bit, so I want to revamp it. I've got the scouts involved. I want the younger generations to be involved, because Memorial Day has become a formality, and I don't like that. It is not, it's not fun. It's not, it's a day of remembering, and we don't thank veterans on Memorial Day. Public service announcement, don't thank a veteran on Memorial Day. We made it back. I got a bagpiper who's coming in. I got some trucks coming in, bunch of veterans. We got food at the VFW, so it's going to be a great event, I hope. my first real like public event, so I'm both terrified and excited, and I'm just very, very nervous.
Great.
Thanks, Ally.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
luck.
Unanimous.
Good night.
Well, while you're getting ready for your next action item, can I give you a real quick story? I said earlier that I don't use social media. I was reminded yesterday that by Amanda, what do you mean, you're on Twitter every day? I said, I haven't been on in a year, really. I have a Twitter account that was my work Twitter account that was attached to the Facebook account that I was taken off of. So every time that Ally or Matt would send out a Facebook, it would go to this Twitter account that I didn't even know I had. So be careful with your accounts, but thanks. I've since disconnected, but for anybody out there who thought I was lying, I really didn't know I was posting this stuff, but good post.
Twitter follower.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so do you want to just go in order now with the rest of them?
May as well.
Okay. So move to approve the reappointment of members to town boards and committees for terms that expire 5/1/20, 5/1/21, and 5/1/22.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah. Everyone knows that I'm a policy person, and, I think that, is there a way we can do this better? Do we look, are these boards still meeting? Has anyone fallen off? Does anyone, some people might even think, oh, well, when my term's up, I don't want to be reappointed, like, just proactively reaching out. Hey, Veteran Services Advisory Committee, you're up for reappointment. We don't need anything from them, but, I think some of these bulk ones, it's good to just be proactive.
Okay.
I know it sounds hard, but it's probably,
No, it's fair. It's just the fact that the world we live in today is really hard to get people to get involved. That's the challenge.
so would you rather have someone whose name we rubber stamp and then they never go to a meeting, or people?
No, we encourage everyone on every level to serve, because I think it's really, in fact, we're trying to do it at the grassroots level and teaching kids.
So here's could be our stance then. Thank you, Anthony Gilby, for your whatever years of service. You are up for reappointment on the State Forest Advisory Council.
Do you wish to reappoint
No, we look forward to the next 1 year of your appointment,
Yeah.
It could be a great way to thank people,
That's
too.
a good thought.
And recognize that we understand that they're on the committee and
That's a good point.
that they're being reappointed.
Always open to those ideas. That's a good one.
Anything else?
Not for the particular boards that are here.
Okay. All those in favor?
All right, block party application. Move to approve block party application submitted by Mr. Richard Rockwood at 148 Chestnut Street for May 11th, 2019, from 3 to 10 p.m., music to end by 8.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I just ask quick? I understand a block, just because this is my first one, that's like on a main road. Do they actually shut down the road, or is this just an application to hold this at his house? So Chestnut Street is a main road. It's not like the block parties on Fairway Lane or a cul-de-sac. How does it work?
In this instance, he came to us like a month or 2 months after done, because it wasn't a traditional block party application. So we said, check with public safety. At a minimum, you'll probably have to do something like this. So he went over and reviewed it with police and fire before any of that, because he knew there would be cars parked on the street.
Okay, so they're not shutting down Chestnut Street, that's, okay.
I wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to be causing an issue.
And I saw both chiefs signed off on it, so.
Right. That's a standard operating procedure.
Okay. All those in favor?
Move to approve the license renewal of 2 coin-operated pool tables at T&O Walker Inc., Rally Point Inn and Pub, to expire 5/1/20.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Move to approve the license renewal of 1 coin-operated pool table for America's Best Value Inn to expire 5/1/20.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to approve Foxborough JC's public event application for the 2019 Concerts on the Common series.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to accept a grant in the amount of $5,896 for the fire department to be used to purchase a mobile data terminal.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation of $50 to the Council on Aging Human Services for the Lockbox program from Anonymous.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation of $90 to the Council on Aging Human Services to pay for half of March Tai Chi classes from the Friends of Foxborough Seniors.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation of $40 to the Boyden Library from the Foxborough Garden Club for used books to purchase in memory.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Recreation, let's see. Move to accept a gift donation of $500 to the Rec Department from the Friends of Foxborough Rec for the Booth Kids Field Trips.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation of $250 to the Recreation Department from Bethany Congregational Church for the Booth Playground.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation of $300 to Veterans Services from Anonymous.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Move to approve minutes from 4/2/19.
Second.
Um,
I'm going to recuse myself because I wasn't at that meeting.
And neither was I. Is that the one I was at?
You were there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, absent. You were not there and I was not there.
Yeah, so we can't,
So we
we'll have to
really-
postpone that till next.
Okay. Move to approve 4/9/19 minutes.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I think this is the one I wasn't there. No, it's not on.
All those in favor?
And move to approve 4/16/19 minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
And I was not there.
We're not there, so 3-0-1.
All right.
Yep,
I think that someone else should make a move to adjourn.
there you go.
I'll
Good
make a
point.
motion to adjourn. End this longest meeting. You're horrible at it, Chairman.
I know, I was
It's
gonna
like
say,
4 hours.
You know, Doc, not for nothing, but.
He's got a lot of learning.
This is
My
longer
time
than your
management had
25-minute
been 2
meeting.
hours.
Baby
Quiet.
steps, baby steps.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jim.